Yeah. So I'm living in this time behind enemy lines, so I got mine, I hope ya.
Woke up this morning, got myself some coffee. Morning for the Bat Cave. It is Friday. It's Friday. I ain't got no job and I ain't got stuff to do. Actually, I have stuff to do. If any of you guys are paying attention to this and keeping me in prayer for something, or just in general, I have a Ugandan pastor I'm meeting with today, giving him a computer. I met this guy through like a home fellowship group, and he seems very legit. He wants to start a expanded ministry for teaching and training pastors in East Africa. Apparently, crazy charismania has taken over East Africa like wildfire, which I've kind of been aware of. I know it's like prosperity teaching, but just really weird, superstitious voodoo, weird syncretism and stuff like that. Like Bethel on steroids. Think of it like that as taking over East Africa. And so this guy wants to start training like basically young pastors and stuff like that to be able to get up to speed quickly on sound doctrine and then spread stuff around. He's got a church of, I think he said like 250 to 300. He's in his 50s. He's been he shared his testimony with me, and he's been with the Lord now. He's been walking with the Lord since he was, I think, in his teens. Smart guy, just not resourced well, and like he doesn't own his own computer. He has to go to the public library and stuff like that to use a computer. So I'm giving him a laptop today. I just happened to have gotten a new one and I had a spare. And I'm gonna have breakfast with this guy, and we're gonna talk about potentially putting teachings and stuff together. But I wanted to. I had a comment on my last video I made. Apparently somebody is uninformed, and don't take this personally. I don't take it personally, but accused me of slander. And if you guys are interacting with this channel, I'm gonna say this. Like every now and again, I just get gangster with people and just tell them to stop or go away, or apologize or go away, essentially. And I'm not doing it with this person, because whoever this person is, obviously they're watching this, having an emotional reaction, uninformed emotional reaction. I've done that before with videos. I know, I hear stuff and I'm like, you're crazy, you're stupid, no, what the F? And then, take a deep breath and go back, and I'm like, oh, I guess that is true, So we all are gonna like get stuff wrong, including me. Okay, just for an example, Alan Kirshner. This is like 3 or 4 years ago. This is when I first started publishing. Within like a few months, I started publishing. I had mistakenly thought that he had plagiarized my book, and the reason is because I met him in person. I gave him a copy of my book. He ghosted me afterwards, and then I found a phrase that I had used in my book. Hold on, I'm not getting any sound here. Oh, it looks like I am getting sound. Okay, then I found a phrase that I had been using in my book on his YouTube channel. Well, I didn't know this because I apparently had a copy of his book. I hadn't read the whole thing. He used the same phrase, and it just was a coincidence, but the timing of it seemed strange. It was like I gave him my book, he ghosted me, and within like 90 days of this, I hear this phrase I use in my book on his podcast or whatever. And so I put out a video. I'm like, this is bullcrap. This guy is plagiarizing my book, and he won't even talk to me. He can't even answer my questions. He basically, and I'll get into this story when I get into the history of eschatology, but that's what this video is. I'm going to give you a history of all the different eschatologies out there, so you guys can know how I'm getting my information and how I break it down. But I'm just going to say, and I don't know if this dude erases comments like, oh, it's slander right here. And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to shred anyone. This is not about if you're in the comment section and I'm talking about a comment and stuff, I'm interacting with a comment. And this is me just in general, just so you know. I don't consider an attack on an idea or something somebody said as an attack on the person. Okay, I just don't think like that, and most people do. If I were to say, I'm a mid-trib rapture guy, and people are like, mid-trib is stupid, I don't hear you're stupid. I hear you think mid-trib is stupid. Okay, well, why? Okay, pre-trib is stupid. Everybody who believes in pre-trib is stupid. Okay, I might say something actually like that, but I'm not trying to like hurt the feelings of the people doing it. I'm not trying to attack their person. What I'm trying to do is wake you up. It's kind of like it's a rhetorical tactic. It's like, that's stupid. Why? Good question. If somebody says that's stupid, or you're stupid if you believe that, like, it's a rhetorical tool to say, well, wait, why? It's basically, it's acting like your idea is absurd and completely uninformed, and you're supposed to wonder, if you have any humility, you're supposed to wonder why. If you don't have humility, you're going to get automatically butthurt and just be like, you can't say I'm stupid. And I'm like, yes, I can say you're stupid. And Paul called people fools, like in his thing, and he's doing it rhetorically. He's not doing it to be mean. Paul's not be like, by the Holy Spirit, you're an idiot. He's not trying to like make fun of the person. But people were less butthurt back then. Today, like this scale of like how butthurt a person gets from the apostles to today is just like, there's probably this correlation where it's just like it's exponential with the rise of the internet and population, and then the eating of soy, and then the feminine everything in the movies, right? Like, you can't watch a movie, and I don't care if it's like a spy movie or if I just watched a movie called Messiah, and it was with the woman who plays Juliana Crane from Man in the High Castle on it, and she's like a CIA agent. And literally, like, there's a CIA agent guy who's like an admin or whatever, and she tells him to do something. He's like, okay, yes, ma'am. And then this other woman tells her what to do, or asks her why, and she's like, you don't need to know. I don't have time to explain to you. Just do it. And so she looks around at the man. You heard her. Just do it. Like, and they just do this nonstop in the movies. They just denigrate men. Okay, like if you haven't seen that pattern in the movies, then you're just not paying attention at all. It's like, that's all they do in movies is tear down men. I'm not like that. I'm like, I don't care if you get on my channel and be like, dude, you're dumb, you think blah blah blah. I don't care. You just better have your facts sorted out, okay? And the reason I want you to do this, and let it be a life lesson, and let it be a little humiliating, because honestly, you're fine. You're fine. I'm fine. We're fine. Okay? It's all about getting better information and being a better steward of what Christ has said by having our information straight. Okay? When you get put into a boot camp in an army, they're going to haze you and beat the crap out of you. And they're going to do it so you don't die in the war. Okay? That's how men operate. And I'm a Generation Xer. I'm 44 years old. And I used to tell people stuff like, look, I grew up in a generation that, like, if me and my best friend punched each other in the face over something somebody said, whatever, when we were 14 years old, that wasn't the end of our friendship. I mean, we were kind of drifting apart as friends anyway, so that's why we punch each other in the face and get in a fist fight. But it's like, it's not necessarily the end of your friendship if you get in a fist fight, if you say some crap about somebody. Sometimes you deal with it and you get in a fight and you get over it. You're just like, okay, let's go drink some beers. And that's just the generation I grew up in. The generation I grew up in did not have, like, the term "you can't say that" never came out of our mouths. I never heard this until I was in college, and I'm sitting here in a class, and this guy was literally like trying to argue this is in like a history class. This guy is literally trying to argue evolution and trying to say that people evolved from monkeys in two distinct groups in the earth, and they didn't all just come from one. And I'm sitting here going, are you trying to say like black people came from gorillas and white people came from Sasquatches and like Asians came from Yetis or whatever? Like, this is like, what are you saying? Like, you really think like a bunch of different animals evolved over time, and then we all look so much alike except for just some, shades and features and, shapes of eyes and stuff like that? Like, that's just dumb. And then we were talking about religions and stuff, and I basically said Taoism is pretty much the religious equivalent of the game Lemmings, which is like these lemmings just fall off a cliff, and unless you like build bridges and dig tunnels and stuff like that to stop them from falling off a cliff, they just die. Okay, that's how lemmings are. They're just a really stupid animal. Okay, and I say this, and this Asian kid, he's like, "You can't say that," and I'm just like, why can't I say it? It's true. Like, if you study, like, Taoism is all about, like, be like a river and just flow wherever you flow and don't resist anything. It's all about passivity. And this dude's, like, telling me, this dude who apparently is affected by religion that's all about passivity is telling me what I can and can't do. And I'm like, keep being passive, dude. Just trust me when I get down to facts. It wasn't until I started interacting with millennials, because I'm like I'm like near the bottom of Generation X, and then millennials come within a few years of me. And it wasn't until I started interacting with millennials that I started realizing that, like, oh, these soy boys are real. Like, I had to literally have somebody explain to me what, like, somebody was just like, but the LGBT, it was only LGBT back then. Okay, this is like early 2000s, but LGBT, and I'm just like, what's LGBT? Like, they're like. and then I had to have somebody explain to me what Facebook was, because I'm just like, dude, like, I just got saved like a few years ago, and like, I was raving and I was partying and I was doing drugs, and then I ended up in mental hospitals, and then I got saved, and then I kind of straightened my life up over the next year, busting hella hours in a factory, and then I was in college again. I was in college before that, but I just washed up. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know I could transfer classes. So when I started over, I just started over. I had no idea. I was clueless. I was not brilliant when I was in my teens and early 20s. But the point is just say what you got to say, but get your facts straight. Just get your facts straight. Okay. Now, this guy apparently responded to something I said about AOC. I don't know what I said about AOC, but I'm going to get the record straight on AOC. AOC flat out teaches false doctrine. I have tried to reach out to him on Facebook on his channel. He deletes comments that aren't super positivity. Okay, Joel Richardson deletes comments that aren't super positivity. He has me blocked on Twitter. He has me blocked on YouTube. This is something you can do on YouTube. You can actually block somebody in such a way that their comments will show up on their YouTube, but they won't show up for anyone else. Okay. This is what these guys do. They're not interested in dialogue. They're not interested in you challenging their position. They just want to sell stuff. And people are going to do that one or two ways. And they're both, one's pathetic, the other one's just devious. One is just saying comments turned off. And that's why you're going to find a lot of Calvinist channels with their comments turned off, because they don't want their comment section to blow up with counter-argumentation that shows them how stupid they are, or with people pointing them to Latent Flowers and Beyond the Fundamentals to show them how stupid they are, okay? The other way people do it is there's a feature that you can do on here where you can literally take somebody's comments, and I don't think I've ever done this. Like, I warn somebody if I'm going to block them, or I just tell them to go away, and they do, and they're like, screw you, you have a little channel. That's fine. I'm not trying to have a huge channel. I'm trying to have a network of communication of people who want to learn the truth and want to grow in it, okay? But you can, like, take somebody. I'm going to show you this guy, Glenn Murphy here, and I forget exactly how you do it, but you can hide user from channel, okay? And what that does is he'll keep commenting and he'll keep seeing it on his, but nobody else will see it, okay? So I look at stuff like that and I just go, this is what people do, so that only the people who get on your channel and say your channel's crap, this is bull crap, here's why, they keep interacting with your channel, but they don't realize that nobody else can see their comments, okay? Now, the only way you can notice this is if you log on somebody else's name and go back to that video and check out the comment section, and you find out, oh, where's my comment? It's not there, because you're the only one who could see it. And it keeps you interacting with it. And then other people, they just see the positive comments. And that's what guys like Joel Richardson and AOC Network and stuff like that do. Okay, probably this guy on Messiah 2030 has done that too, because when he first posted up there, I said, this video has the spirit of Antichrist. Please ask why, and I'd be happy to explain it to you. And I didn't get any responses whatsoever. Normally, if you put something like that on a popular video, you'll have a whole slew of people saying boo and thumbs down and stuff like that. And this guy's got 1 million views and not one person responded. So I know what he does. He just ghosts your comments so nobody else can see them, okay? These people don't want to know the truth. They don't want to have their ideas challenged. They want to sell content, okay? Guarantee their videos are monetized. Guarantee they're making decent money off of them. And they don't want to have their channel interrupted by facts, okay? So I don't have a lot of tolerance for that, but trust me when I say I do try to reach out to these people and try to interact with their ideas before I say anything about them. Again, I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. But if I make mistakes, I'm pretty thick-skinned, and I'm pretty, I've been through humiliating experiences, okay? I've been through humiliating experiences for my faith to levels that most of you wouldn't understand. You would not know how to physically and psychologically deal with what I've been through for my faith, okay? So I'm not going to get butthurt over somebody saying, you're stupid, you're wrong, here's why. But if you're going to call somebody a slanderer, have your facts lined up. Okay? Have your facts lined up. You don't just be like, well, they follow the Bible. That's what everyone says. Okay? Have your facts lined up. If I say, why do you say that, and you don't respond, you owe me an apology or some facts, or let's just be done. Okay? Don't waste my time. Don't waste other people's time on my channel. I'm not going to block you. I'm not going to hide you from channel. I'm going to tell you about yourself. And if you don't have the humility and the integrity and the manhood to just stand up and just say, yeah, I was wrong, sorry. Me and this other guy had a comment back and forth, and we were both over it in an hour or something like that. We just look at each other's comments. Oh yeah, sorry, I misread you right there. I apologize. But you did say this and this was wrong. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry too. Okay, we're done. Move on. That's Generation X, and that's why we're gonna out survive. The millennials are all gonna be either Gen Z is gonna be drafted to the hill. Half of the millennials are gonna be drafted. The other half are just gonna be crying for the government to save them, and Gen X is just gonna be I guess beer is gonna get more expensive, and they're just gonna move on, right? We know how to use technology. We know how to work hard. We know how to punch each other in the face and take a throw punch and keep on walking forward. So we're just going to rule the world, but not really, because the world's going to end. We're not going to really last long. So anyways, this is going to be a brief history of all eschatological theories. So you guys can understand, I have been studying eschatology. Trust me, I've been studying eschatology since before I was saved. I mean, when I was 16, me and my best friend would grab the book of Daniel and grab the book of Revelation and start looking at this stuff. I was into X-Files. I was into Nostradamus. I was into anything about this future prophecy predicting stuff. I didn't have any discernment, but I was into it, okay? And then I got saved in 2000, the year 2000. So I've been saved now for over 23 years, about 23 and a half years. And then I got my eschatology sorted out around 2013 to 2015. That's when I got it all sorted out. And basically I did that by somebody asking me to teach in a Bible study. I felt like I've had numerous confirmations of being called to teach, and I just said to the Lord, I said, if I'm called to teach, then I'm not going to have to ask to teach. Somebody else is going to have to ask me to teach. And I was asked to teach a Bible study in a church called Carpenter's House Ministries in Hudsonville. The church is no longer there. But I was... when you look up eschatology charts... I was asked to teach a Bible study for a bunch of men because the church was, all the people with families wanted to do vacations and stuff in the summer, and they didn't want to do their main Bible study, their men's Bible study throughout the summer. They wanted to block it, but then all the widowers and divorcees and people who didn't have families wanted to keep doing Bible study, and they knew that I was single, and they're like, hey, Aaron, do you want to teach Bible study? And I showed up, and literally the first time I sat down, it was just 3 old guys and another guy showed up, and as soon as he saw that I was teaching, he was like, I'm out of here. He just turned around and left, which is really rude. But that same guy actually was the guy who years later said, you need to write a book because you have so much knowledge in your head, okay? So that's a testimony of the Lord. When somebody can sit there and like scoff at just the idea of you teaching in the first place and then turn around and receive so much from you that they're recommending that you write a book, like that's the Lord giving praise, basically, you know, because he's turning people's hearts around who were against you to being for you, or, you know, to thinking you're not worth your substance as a teacher, to thinking you should write a book. Okay, so when I was teaching in this class, I was teaching through eschatology because there were people in my church who were getting to the blood moons and the Shemitahs and Jonathan Cahn and John Hagee and just bad teachers and stuff like that. And so I started teaching to kind of put stuff in order and put an eschatological timeline in order. And when I got to the part about teaching through when the rapture happens, it was mostly 2 Thessalonians 2 that was sticking in my head because I had been pre-trib before that. And I'm just like, the cognitive dissonance was so thick, I'm just like, I don't know if this is true. I just don't know if this is true. Like, maybe it is, but like I couldn't settle it in my own head, as like I didn't have confidence in the things that I was saying, because I'm just sitting here going, it doesn't make sense in my own head, but I'm saying it because I've heard it before. And this is something that we do a lot, where we're just sitting here. Let's see if I can find my eschatology. Oh, look, did I have a history of eschatological thought? I do. Okay, so apparently I have a history of eschatological thought timeline, but apparently it's not fully worked out. So maybe I'm going to have to, you know, work on that from here. Looks like I started doing that in 2021. But essentially, I started interacting with Chris White, and I liked his stuff because he had come out of conspiracy theory stuff and then had gotten saved. And I had been going through a funk of being stuck on conspiracy theories, just because I'm dealing with people in the church from like post 9/11, and not only that, like 10 years after 9/11, I was actually working for a private security contractor that was doing work with the mercenary community and the CIA and stuff like that. And I'm seeing stuff firsthand, going, okay, dude, we did the Arab Spring. I know we did the Arab Spring because I work for a company that like all of a sudden got the contract to guard the UN-sanctioned government of Somalia, and within 1 year, the Arab Spring happened. And I was personally getting black market weapons websites sent to me, and then people were taking them from me. And next thing you know, crates of weapons are showing up in the in Egypt and Libya and stuff like that, and they're overthrowing the government, and then our government's selling it like it just spontaneously happened on Facebook, which is just a lie, okay? The Arab Spring was a straight up covert op, and when it first started happening, you had reporters telling you that CIA and MI6 were shipping weapons across the border from Egypt to Libya. First, they destabilized Egypt so you could ship stuff across Egypt. And I'm like, well, where's this stuff shipping into? And this is easy. It's shipping in from Somalia. Somalia was a broken government. You go to Somalia, and that's right next to Ethiopia and Eritrea. And then you can just go through there, up through Sudan and Egypt, and then over into Libya. And then from the south in Libya, you can start getting weapons shipped up that can go up toward the coast. And that's what those guys ended up doing. They started overthrowing the government. And then when they overthrew the government, the CIA tried to buy back all those weapons so they could ship them into Syria and give them to ISIS, and then they could overthrow Assad too. This is literally what was going on in 2010 through 2011, and this is why the Ukraine war is going on right now. And so I know this is a long story, and this is not on topic. This is probably going to be a 3-hour long video when it should be a 1 hour long video, but this is what it is, okay? So I'm sitting here going, okay, there's something fishy going on, and this is like years of me like feeling this way and knowing from first-hand information that like there's some serious end times crazy going on here. What ends up happening is the Benghazi incident happens, and Michael Bay makes a film about it, 13 hours. You guys want to watch that? And like he just whitewashes the whole thing. Michael Bay's a propagandist, and he basically makes it look like these brave U.S. soldiers were trying to defend our CIA hub and our ambassador from this random attack that started based on a YouTube video, because that's what Hillary Clinton said. Well, that was an absolute lie. What we were trying to do is we were trying to buy back all the weapons that we had shipped to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi through Egypt, and I'm pretty sure through this company I used to work for. And then we were going to buy them back, and we were going to put them in the hands of ISIS in Syria so they could overthrow Bashar al-Assad. Okay? And then that failed because the Libyans, basically, their militias stormed that compound and took all the weapons. Okay? And then that's why you have a bunch of factions in Libya now that are basically like militias running the country. And it's just been like ISIL's in it, but there's really just a lot of just different tribal factions that got weapons now, and they're just like, we're not going to have a central government now because we've had that before and they were raping and murdering our daughters, so screw that. Okay? And so that failed, and so what we did is we had a bunch of soldiers in Basra, Iraq, basically just drop their weapons, their gear, their tanks, their Humvees, their uniforms and everything, and then the ISIL soldiers came across the border, took them, and then went back, and they made it sound like the news report was, oh, they just got so scared they just ran and dropped their uniforms and everything, and that was bullcrap. We literally armed ISIS to the teeth to fight Bashar al-Assad, and that's when Russia stepped in and was like, hell to the no, we know what you did. And they start saying, okay, you guys are claiming to fight ISIS, but you're actually arming ISIS, and we know you are. You're dropping crates of weapons to them. You're, you gave them weapons through the Iraqi military. We know what you're doing. And so we started saying, we're fighting ISIS in Syria. And they started saying, yeah, so are we fighting ISIS in Syria. And they started attacking our allies, and we started attacking their allies. And we basically had a proxy war in Syria since 2011, okay? Well, mind you, this is all like a year after I just have this falling out with this crooked security contractor I work for. I had gone to the FBI, I had dumped a bunch of information on it, it was all crooked. I literally spent I was 3 to 6 months completely off grid. Like, you couldn't find me. And I was using cricket phones. Like, I was like Jason Bourning my way through America. Just like hiding and just like, I was in some seedy places because I just did not want to be found, because I had basically messed with a company that was associated with 300 trained mercenaries, and we're getting millions of dollars in contracts from the federal government, and I just basically got them out of the industry. Like, I went and I was their business development guy, and I basically blew their name wide open to the entire network I had, literally downloaded all their contacts on a BlackBerry. They had a BlackBerry that they had given me that they were monitoring, and I went and got another BlackBerry, got their IT guy, got all their information, dumped it to the FBI, then sent an email to everybody in their contacts list letting them know what they were doing, and said, don't do business with these guys. And within a year, they were selling their assets and deciding to get into oil fracking instead, because these two idiots from Ada, Michigan were just thought they were going to have their own CIA. Like, these guys literally they would call my boss, my manager, they would call him my handler, because these guys were just like wannabe CIA. Okay? So anyways, this was 10, 11 years ago. And then after that, I have this experience where, like, I'm traveling, my car gets towed, I'm waiting for a ride somewhere, and I just get a prophetic word for somebody about a storm coming, and I say it to him, and he calls the police and gets me thrown in jail. I'm like beat up and tortured and stuff in this jail, because it's like this jail that now has like 300 indictments against, or like 300 lawsuits against it, and it's up for federal indictments and stuff like that, because they had been taking people off the streets who they thought were homeless and stuff like that, and drunks and stuff like that, and then they were actually hiring out, they were putting them in the mental health care part of the jail, and then they would basically train SWAT police on them. And so they were literally having people come from all over the country to practice on these guys who are basically homeless, and they would just get trumped up like trespassing charges on them and stuff like that, throw them in jail, and then they would keep them from sleeping until they're going crazy, so they can say, we're giving them mental health treatment. And then they'd keep them in there, and whenever they'd flip out, they'd send in, I kid you not, I experienced this like 5 times before they got me out of there. They would send in like 6 guys in full riot gear. They would shoot you with like, it was like a paintball gun with like a powder in it that would like, supposed to like, cloud your vision or whatever, and then they would just come in and just start busting moves on you. And I mean, out cold, covered in blood, covered in crap, like abuse. And this went on for days and days and days. But the whole time this was happening, and I mean, I did not sleep for 5 days. I was going freaking crazy. 5-6 days at least, okay? I was going freaking crazy by the time 2 guards took me aside, and they were just like, we know what's going on in this jail. You got picked up for trespassing, didn't you? Yes. And these guys were literally just like, showed me the outside, and they were like, it has been black ever since you got in here. And these guys knew the police report, because the police report is basically like, there's this crazy homeless guy who told me God told him this and this and this, and he's dangerous, so he's got a knife. Well, I had a keychain with a little tiny, you know those multi-tools with a little tiny pocket knife on it, and I was whittling a stick when I said this to this guy. I didn't know what I was going to say. It was just prophetic word. But anyways, what ended up happening was the largest tornado storm in the U.S. started immediately when they picked me up. And it went from being like a bright sunny day to being the sky black and just tornadoes all throughout the southeast of the United States. And tore through Raleigh. Like, it kept spinning and going on, and it would restart other tornado storms, and then like 2 weeks later it destroyed Joplin, Missouri. So like, this is all happening literally at me telling this guy, like, when I get moved from this place, this is an atheist I said this to, that a storm's gonna come. And so these guards in this jail, they get me out of here, and then I go back to my apartment. But I had been gone for weeks, and then I had basically had contracts that I had started, because I had just started my own like business development and Salesforce consulting business to a company that sold software to this private security industry. I was trying to just like get away from that old company and then like figure out how to make a living, because this is after the '08 crash, and it's still pretty rough out there. And I just got my first contract. These guys had just given me like, $1,400 to get started. And next thing you know, I'm gone. I'm disappeared for like 2-3 weeks. So these guys think I took their money and ran. They're actually Christians. And so I ended up, talking to them, and I ended up working with them for like a year or so after that. And they're still on my LinkedIn. But it looked really sketchy. It's like, yeah, we just gave you $1,400 and all of a sudden you disappeared. And I'm just like, yeah, I was in jail. Like, these guys picked me up. And anyways, I end up, this all keeps spinning until I'm homeless. Until I'm like totally bankrupt, totally homeless. You get your life disrupted for weeks on end. And the credit cards are all of a sudden, like, they changed the credit card laws, and they just took all my limits down to like $1 above what I had on balance. And then as soon as I missed a payment, I was just bankrupt. And then I ended up bankrupt and homeless on the streets of Charlotte for like 6 months. And I got back on my feet, and literally like the people in my life were just like, God must be dealing with you. Are you on drugs? Like, they just didn't believe, like, this can't just happen like overnight. Like, you were fine a year ago, and now all of a sudden you're homeless on the streets. Like, what happened? And they thought I either went crazy or was on drugs or broke the law or did something, and or I was just lying. Like, they just didn't believe me. And this is just God dealing with me. And then it was after that like I had, long story, but basically I had said to the Lord that I thought I had lost my salvation. This is when I still believed you could lose your salvation. I thought I lost my salvation. I was just cursed. I literally was just like, God just King Saul'd you. Like, you're done. Right? Like, that's how I felt. Like, my life was going so crazy. And then that's when it was right before all that stuff happened. Then I had a dream that I was told I was going to go to the UP and preach the gospel, which was a train wreck when I went. But then it was like, after that, I had said to the Lord privately in my own heart in my prayer, without saying it out loud, that if I could just be a janitor in the kingdom of heaven, just to know that I'm saved, I would be a janitor in the kingdom of heaven. And literally, I got invited within like a week of that. I got invited to a Pentecostal church by my. I'm now like renting a room from this old guy that I helped, in a scrape with some crackheads, and he rented a room to me. And the landlord's daughter invites me to church, and when we get to church, it's all crazy Pentecostal, and this guy gets up when they're doing their crazy Pentecostal stuff, and he says, there's somebody here who told God that if I could be a janitor in the kingdom of heaven, just to know I'm saved, it'll be enough for me, and God wants you to know that you're not going to be a janitor in the kingdom of heaven, you're going to preach the gospel. Okay? So that's my story. Like, when I talk about supernatural stuff, like, I've seen some crazy stuff. I mean, like, drive up to a rest stop and you just gotta pee, and the Holy Spirit tells you like there's homosexuals in the rest stop, and you end up casting a demon out of one of them and leading them to the Lord. Like, that kind of crazy stuff going on. I'm not trying to like show off signs and wonders. I'm just saying I've seen some stuff. So anyways, all this leads to me saying to the Lord, if you want me to teach, you need to have somebody ask me to teach, because I'm not going to promote myself. Like, I have a bad reputation. All these people have trashed me. I did fall into sin the year before because I went through this stuff with the CIA contractor, and then I also went through a broken engagement, and then I also dropped out of law school to take this job, and then I had some people break in my house, and then I had people come up and try to get me to come out of my house, which they literally looked like they were going to murder me. And then the next day my house is broken into, my computer's stolen, and I literally had this company trying to pin all this stuff, this fraud they were doing on me, by getting at my computer. And that's when it went down. That's when I started going off grid. I mean, this was like millions of dollars of federal fraud, and they were trying to pin it on me because I found out about it. Anyways, all that crazy is to say, now it's, this is all like 2010 through 2011, and in 2013 now I'm super depressed, and everybody I know is crazy. Their heads in the sand. They don't want to understand what's going on in the world, and I'm sitting here going, dude, we're going into the end times and nobody cares. Like, literally, we're clearing the parking lot for the Antichrist kingdom in the Middle East, and nobody cares. And I had written papers in college in 2006 where I worked out Ezekiel 38 and 39, except for the North Korea part, and said that I said, if I'm right, I said Russia's going to invade Ukraine, and then Georgia, and then Armenia, and then they're going to form a land bridge with Iran so that they can't get shut out of shipping through the Black Sea by Turkey, and then they're going to have supply lines so that they can do a full-scale invasion of the Middle East and take over Israel and Saudi Arabia. Okay, so that's what I believe was going to happen. So I say this in 2006. In 2008, Russia invades Georgia. Or no, that's the order I said. I said Georgia, Ukraine, and Armenia. And I didn't really think there needed to be a specific order between Georgia and Ukraine. I just knew Russia needed to take over Ukraine geopolitically to make sure that that supply line couldn't get quickly cut off by NATO. And then they needed to take over, obviously, Armenia after Georgia, because Georgia's between Russia and Armenia. So in 2008, they invade Georgia. In 2011, they invade Ukraine, and then they start linking up with Syria, and they're boosting up Bashar al-Assad's, and then now they're putting sea bases in Syria, and now that we're starting to have a proxy war with Russia and Syria. This is 2011, and I'm like, holy crap, you guys! The stuff that I predicted is starting to happen. We're heading towards the end times, because this leads into Daniel's 70th week, and nobody cared, nobody listened. Okay, everyone just treated me like I was crazy, like I was obsessed with conspiracy theories and stuff like that, and nobody would listen. And I'm like, no. I'm like showing them my college paper. Look, like, I had friends who've looked me up, because I had actually posted this online at one point in time, and I've had friends who looked me up and they're like, dude, you posted this stuff online and it's happening in real life. And I'm like, I know that website's gone now, but nobody will listen to me. I can't get anyone to listen to me. I published a book. I've got a YouTube channel. I still can't get anyone to listen to me. Okay. So I have been predicting the stuff that leads into Daniel's 70th week happening for 18 years now, or 17 years now, okay? I'm pinpoint accuracy, and I'm sitting here going, I can't get people to listen, and whether that's a matter of God, tweaking my character, and he's not going to have me heard until I'm a better representation of him, or I just suck at marketing, or I'm just an abrasive personality and I talk too much to make my point, or I just need to wait it out, or it's only meant to be heard by a few people because we're a remnant. I don't know, but I can't get people to listen. I mean, I literally, I had dozens of people who were in a Bible study in my church prior to COVID, when I literally said, this is going to happen, then this, then this, then this. I wrote it in my book, literally, like a pandemic, a currency reset. They're going to start talking about aliens. You're going to see lots of drones pop up, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm not just saying this from the Bible. I'm getting dreams about it, too. And I'm just like the Lord gave me in a dream to show me that Revelation 6 was a pole shift. I just dreamed it. I'm just all of a sudden standing on the earth, and the whole earth just starts spinning around like crazy, and the stars look like they're falling, and it's actually a pole shift. It's not actually literal stars falling to the earth. It's what it looks like when you're looking up at the sky. and I've just had like half a dozen solid like World War III dreams where I'm pretty sure I know what's going to happen. So I'm having all this happen, and by the time like the pandemic starts happening and all this stuff, I'm like, okay, people got to start listening to me now. And what happened is almost everybody from that background, literally those people who sat in those Bible studies, those churches, almost all of them have since unfriended me. It freaks them out. They don't want to deal with it. And I've had people tell me this. Like, I've literally had friends tell me, like, we've got a family to raise, and we don't want to be around you because it makes us think about the end times because you're always talking about it. And I'm just like, you realize it doesn't slow down the end times by you not thinking about it, right? Like, you have to deal with what's happening, and it doesn't matter. Like, people just, they prefer their cognitive dissonance. They prefer not knowing, the ignorance is bliss kind of thing, and I've lost a lot of friends over it. And so that's when I took to YouTube. I mean, I was just getting slandered left and right by pastors who are like, oh, don't listen to that guy. He's just got a critical spirit. He's just got a negative whatever. He's a negative Nelly. Just don't listen to him. Okay? And people would listen to them. Like, literally pastors saying I had a demon and stuff like that, when I'm just like, I'm accurately predicting the future and you're saying I have a demon. Why would you do that? Are you pointing to sin in my life? No. Are you pointing to false doctrine? And I would literally have people be like, that guy's a false teacher. And I'm like, you're saying on Facebook I'm a false teacher? Nobody you know has ever come to me accusing me of teaching falsehood. So unless you have an actual accusation of me being a false teacher with some evidence, can you please take your comment down? And literally these people are like, that's proof that you have a demon because you have no humility. And I'm just like, you're saying I have a demon, and the proof that I have a demon is that I'm saying if you don't have evidence, please stop telling people I have a demon. Like, and I'm just dealing with this from like dozens of people. I mean, pastors, people who are pastoring churches in West Michigan. And the reality is they're idiots, they're carnal, they're not led by the Spirit, and truth freaks them out. And that's the internet, that's the days we're in. Remember, Jesus said they will not endure sound doctrine in the last days, okay? So it's like, I'm understanding that if you're here and if you've really paid attention to this channel, you understand that we're a remnant, okay? People won't endure sound doctrine, and we're a remnant, okay? Now, there's some stuff that you need to know about this channel, first of all. When you guys ask me about, do you have a timeline? Like this guy asked me, do I have an eschatological timeline, okay? Look, if you go to a channel and that channel has solid teaching on it, look for the playlists. Because I have playlists on, look at Christendom, Logic versus Rhetoric, Underground Bible Studies. This is just a bunch of cool stuff that you'll learn. Watch all of it, okay? If you like your podcast, like I used to work in a factory and I would just sit and listen to podcasts and old books on LibriVox.org all day. That's how I know so much stuff. I just listened to a ton of stuff, ton of Bible, ton of, like old history books. And then I've got a social studies bachelor's degree. I went to law school. I did some master's level classes. I just did 6 months in seminary. Did some MBA coursework. Like I've just been a lifetime learner, okay? But like I have videos called The Gospel Explained. Okay, and I mean, this is my soteriology. Watch this. If you understand why I'm against Calvinism, watch this. I have this Revelation study that I did with a bunch of people, okay? They're up to 6 of us, but there's usually like 3 or 4 of us on the video, okay? And we go through everything from, like, pretty much my Revelation book is all in here up to the rapture, okay? I have denominational apologetics. That's me, like, tearing down Calvinism or Calvinism, Romans 9 stuff. This is Burning Rome is basically about how all the Greek philosophy got in the church, and that's leading into my Rightly Dividing book that I'm writing right now, okay? There's me and Aaron discussing believing versus born again and the idea of whether or not you can lose your salvation. Like there's Hebrew roots, right? Like there's stuff that, like, whatever I do, I compile into playlists, okay? And so, like, you want to get if you want my soteriology, Gospel Explained. If you want to know what I think of different denominations, there, okay? I'm going to keep populating this stuff, but start familiarizing yourself with my past stuff, because, like, I don't want to just keep making videos of the same thing, okay? About Underground Publishing is stuff that is about me or my channel, so it might be personal testimony stuff. Eschatological apologetics. I have 45 videos on here, y'all.
Sorry, boy.
45 videos on eschatology, okay? they're all worthwhile. I'm not going to say they're all great. I'm not going to say I couldn't do them better, but they're all worthwhile. You will learn so much if you watch these four. I mean, this is like if you're in a factory and you're listening all day, or you've got your car commute to work. I mean, most of these videos are between 40 minutes and an hour and a half. Okay? Between 40 minutes and an hour and a half. And literally, it's just tons of stuff about criticizing the pre-trib rapture, criticizing Gog-Magog invasion, criticizing the pre-wrath theory, and then I have a bunch of mid-trib. I have one that's just called Mid-Trib proofs. Okay, I have a whole playlist of just proofs of the mid-trib rapture. Okay, so let's see if I can find that in Christ. Okay. Oh yeah, so it looks like I consolidated my mid-trib proofs. So I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mid-trib proofs, okay? These are 8 videos on proving the mid-trib rapture with different parts of the Bible, okay? Watch this stuff. Get familiarized with all of it, and then you can, I'm more than happy to have you critique my eschatology, because here's why. One is, I think this is me, this is my humble brag, I think I know eschatology better than anyone on the internet. Period. I've never met anybody who is teaching me stuff I don't know about eschatology. They start getting into their stuff and I'm like, yeah, I've heard that, okay? And just to show you, I'm going to give you a history of all the different eschatological views right now off the top of my head, okay? Now, in the beginning, you have one eschatology, and that is mid-trib, premillennial eschatology, okay? That's it. That's the only eschatology out there. If you don't believe me, you need to go read in the early church fathers, the apostolic fathers. You need to start with, this is the order that they're written in, okay? And I follow this principle when I study doctrine, when I study the Bible, okay? Rule of first mention, okay? WWWF. What the F, okay? What was written first? What was written first, okay? Or who wrote what first? Who wrote what first, okay? That's your baseline. And this is ANF 01. This is Early Church Fathers. You can get on this for free. And you want to read Barnabas and Papias and Justin Martyr and Irenaeus, okay? These guys are like, this is about probably 75 AD. Papias is about 130 AD. This is about 150 AD. Irenaeus is about 180 AD, okay? These guys, and the Didache you want to read, okay? These guys are all within 80 years of John the Apostle's death, okay? So if you haven't read, and it's not a ton of stuff, okay? Yes, Justin Martyr wrote a ton of stuff. You see this whole packet of stuff here is 1,500 pages, and most of that is Justin Martyr and Irenaeus. Most of these guys' stuff is short, okay? But Barnabas, Papias, Justin Martyr, and Irenaeus all have eschatology stuff. And if you read everything they say and you put it all together, it's pre-mill. They believe in a 7,000-year history. They believe they're running off the Septuagint, so their timelines are going to be up. But none of these guys put together timelines of church history. But they're mid-trib. They believe Daniel's 70th week is in the future. None of these guys expressly say it, but Irenaeus, if you read into what he's saying, what he's quoting, it's clear that he's referencing Daniel's 70th week as being in the future. But that's your first generation of people after the apostles and what they have to say about it. So get to know Papias, get to know Justin Martyr, get to know Irenaeus, and get to know Barnabas, okay? And that's where you're going to get your eschatology from. I'm not going to lay this out there for you because I've laid it out in other videos, okay? These guys were, trust me, they knew Nero wasn't the Antichrist. They all knew the revelation was written during Domitian. There is no, like, you're going to have these theories that are going to pop out in the 18th, 19th, 20th century mostly. It's mostly 19th and 20th century where all your false doctrines come from. And these guys are going to make up lies, and these guys are going to, that's when dispensationalism pops up. That's when preterism pops up. That's when amillennialism as a systematic starts popping up. They didn't exist. Everybody was pre-mill, mid-trib rapture. Daniel 70th week in the future, mid-trib rapture. I will debate anyone on that subject, and you will show up and do your homework, and I will shred you. Anyone in the world, the early church was pre-mill, mid-trib rapture, Daniel 70th week in the future. Anyone in the world, bring it on, because you're not going to find any deviation from that until you start to get to Clement of Rome. Now, Clement was a Gnostic, and all you need to do is just look up this document and type in the word Gnostic, okay? And you're going to find two people using it. You're going to find Irenaeus, who describes Gnosticism, and then you're going to find Clement of Rome, who suggests that the church should be Gnostic. Okay? He does not mince words about it. He's mixing Platonic and Stoic and Pythagorean philosophy in with the Bible. He's calling God by names that these philosophers call God, and he's saying that a true Christian Gnostic should be like this. Okay? And he's the first one who suggests that Daniel's 70th week is fully fulfilled. Okay? The reason is because him and he doesn't espouse amillennialism, but him and Origen are going to start to teach universalism, and they're going to start to teach that basically God, because God is impassible. This is where this all comes from. They get from Stoicism that God is impassible. In other words, God doesn't have any emotions or feelings. Okay, this is not scriptural, but your Calvinists are going to hold this, your Catholics are going to hold this, and your Orthodox are going to hold this. Augustine's going to hold this. Okay, it comes from these guys. It started with Justin Martyr, and it goes to Clement. Okay. And Clement is basically going to say, because God's impassible, he's going to say he's merciful, and he's going to hold to a earlier form of total depravity, which basically says there's nothing good in us, there's nothing of God in us. Okay, and so, but he's saying that God is impassibly merciful. God's not really getting mad. When God exhibits wrath and anger, what that is just the natural consequences of our sin. God is not specifically being provoked to wrath by us, even if the Bible flat out says he is. Okay, he would say because he's impassible and he's immutable, you can't make him mad, because that would be you changing God. That would be you forcing God to change. And that's stupid, because God lays out, why he gets mad. And he says, if you do this, I get mad. God is not an it. He's not a principle. He's not an impassible monad. He's a person. And he gets mad when you do certain things like go worship other gods. His name is jealous. He's a jealous God, okay? His first attribute that he lays out about himself in Scripture is an emotion. He's jealous. My name is jealous, okay? So to say God doesn't have emotion is just theologically stupid, and it's idolatry, okay? So you need to, if you're going to seminary, you need to talk to your professors and say, God is not impassible, God is not immutable. That didn't come from the Bible, that came from Stoicism, and it's idolatry, okay? You're worshiping an image, and it just because it's an image in your head, not an image you made out of gold, wood, or stone, doesn't mean you're not worshiping an image in the place of God. It's idolatry, okay? But Clement is going to be the first one, and he's just a bad scholar when it comes to math and dates and stuff like that. And he's going to say that Daniel's 70th week, he's going to say that it's really weird, but he's going to basically say that the 69th week is going to be fulfilled, and he's going to split it up, and he's going to say Nero did he's basically going to put Daniel's 70th week between Nero and Vespasian's destruction of the temple. And his math is all effed up to get there, because that means you have to put the 69th week in 64 AD. But he just kind of jumps, and he has a gap theory, but that gap theory is basically going from Jesus' death to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And the reason is because your average person, based on your interpretations of Luke and the Olivet Discourse, thought Jesus was going to come back in 70 AD, and he didn't. Well, Barnabas writes to that effect, and that's why he's writing to tell them about the 7,000 years and about the future coming of the temple. And Barnabas is going to say right there, this is the Barnabas, he says that the same people that tore down the temple are going to rebuild it. And it just so happens the legions who tore down the temple were from Macedonia and Pergamum. Macedonia, it's the one where Satan's throne is, and I think that's Pergamum, okay? That's where the legions were who did it. I looked this up, okay? And that happens to be the only two locations of Alexander's four generals that the Antichrist can come from, because he has to come from one of the four generals, and it just happens to be where the legions came from that tore down the temple. And Barnabas is saying that, remember, he was one of the 70. He is saying that Jesus said that the same people who tore down the temple are going to rebuild it, okay? This is Barnabas saying Jesus said it, okay? So he says that to tweak people's theology, because Revelation has not been written yet. This is before Revelation is written. And he's telling them that there's going to be a literal 1,000 years in the future. There's going to be 7,000 years total, and that there's going to be a future rebuilt temple, and the Antichrist is going to sit in it, okay? That's what Barnabas is saying, okay? So this isn't something the dispensationalists pulled together. This isn't something the Jesuits pulled together. This is something that the early church fathers believe, okay?
Irenaeus is going to talk about the two witnesses. They're two men, okay? And there's always been argumentation over whether it's Enoch and Elijah, or some people would say it is Moses and Elijah, okay? Moses and Elijah because they're the two that stand next to the Lord. Everyone knows those verses. And Enoch and Elijah because neither one of them tasted death, and that idea that it's appointed unto men to die once gets applied to Enoch and Elijah because neither of them died, okay? That's a bad argument because everybody who gets raptured doesn't die. That's why I disagree with that argument. But you're going to find all this stuff scattered in the fifth book of Irenaeus' Against Heresies. In the fifth book, and these chapters, if you just go in here and read it, these chapters are actually have headings on them that tell you what they say. So you can be like, he contends these testimonies already understood allegorically of celestial beings, but they shall have their fulfillment in the coming of Antichrist and the resurrection. So he is already starting to argue against allegorical interpretation, and he publishes this about 20 years before Clement publishes his Stromata, because that's where all the allegorical interpretation is coming from. It's guys who are mixing in Greek philosophy and trying to make it line up with Stoicism and Platonic stuff using Pythagorean hermeneutics, and they're allegorizing stuff because that's what the Pythagoreans did. That's how they changed and altered all the Greeks' religions. That's how they got them believing in reincarnation. That's how Philo of Alexandria started mixing Greek philosophy and mostly Stoicism and Platonism into Judaism. And that's where Jewish Gnosticism came from. Gnosticism was around before Christianity. There was Jewish Gnostic sects long before there was Christian Gnostic sects, like literally over 100 years before, okay? So, but you see where he talks about the dead being raised, the Antichrist. Here's him treating Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and Daniel. And he has the rapture being the earth giving up their dead. And he cites Isaiah 24 and 26 and shows you how he puts them in their secret chambers before he pours out his wrath. But if you take all this stuff and coordinate it together, it's clearly he's saying it's at the midpoint of Daniel's 70th week, okay? Now, I've gotten into this in other videos, so I'm not going to, like I have a video called Hippolytus and Irenaeus Taught Mid-Trib. So watch that video if you want to understand why, okay? That was the theory until Clement of Alexandria starts coming up with his Gnosticism, okay? Now, from there you go to, Clement is mostly mixing in Stoicism, but after him you're going to have Origen mix in Platonic philosophy, and he's going to come up with the idealist interpretation of stuff that says that a material kingdom come is impossible because he's a universalist and he doesn't believe in a literal bodily resurrection. That's where amillennialism starts, okay? It starts with people who don't believe in a literal bodily resurrection. This is where it comes from. Everybody who knows their eschatology and everybody knows their church history knows this. It started with Clement and Origen of Alexandria, okay? These guys were mixing in Greek philosophy, turning Christianity into Gnosticism, and then they weren't honoring what the scripture says because they didn't believe in a literal physical kingdom come in the future, okay? They start tearing down the 7,000 years thing, but they're not really openly attacking it because they're new to the game and they know most of the church believes what they believe. But Clement is going to basically head the school in Alexandria, and then Origen's going to start a school in Caesarea, and these are the main two Christian schools, the main two seminaries in all of Christendom, okay? There's people who are being trained, like being groomed by the pastors that came before them, but there are no Christian academies. There are no Christian universities except for what Clement and Origen control. And within about 100 years, they take over the church. They take over the intelligentsia of the church, okay? So that's Origen, okay? Now, Origen's going to die around 250 AD. Clement's going to die around 215 AD. So you're looking at 35 years difference between those guys. Tertullian is going to talk a little bit about eschatology, and he's going to put forward a theory that Daniel's 70th weeks are completed, but it's totally going to disagree with Clement's theory, okay? He's not particularly premillennial or amillennial or whatever. He's just doing it where he's trying to calculate. He's writing against the Jews, and he's trying to show them that the Messiah came, and he uses Daniel's 70th weeks to do that, and then he has a different formula than Clement, but he says Daniel's 70th weeks are fulfilled, okay? So those two theories both come around about 100 years after the apostles, but again, Clement is writing against the pagans to show how the pagans' history is jacked up, but that the Bible's history aligns with secular history better than theirs does, okay? Tertullian is writing against the Jews to show them that the Messiah came and went and they missed it, and he just is getting his formulas wrong, okay? But again, these guys aren't trying to work out an eschatology here. They're trying to argue different things to different groups of people, and that's why it's not as important to them, okay? The Jews don't have much better. The Jews are really jacked up, and they're getting into allegorizing and stuff like that too. They have been for years, and that's why you have Pharisees and Sadducees, and that's why they miss Christ. That's why they didn't see Christ coming, and the Magi did, because the Magi were under Daniel in Persia from back in the day, and so they were taught by Daniel. Daniel was the revered prophet that saved the Magi's life. Okay, so the Magi knew who Daniel were. Meanwhile, the Pharisees and Sadducees were all Hellenized, and they were mixing in Greek philosophy with all their crap and making all the same mistakes the early church made. Okay, so that's why they didn't know about Christ's first coming, or they didn't know when it was, when they should have known, and Christ rebuked them for not knowing the season. You don't need to know the day or the hour, but you should know the season. Okay, you have prophecies that are giving you time statements. Okay, that are telling you when it's going to happen. So there was no excuse for that. So anyways, Origen is going to basically put forward amillennialism, and what you're going to find after Origen, well, before Origen, I'm going to get into Hippolytus. I don't know why Hippolytus is listed so far after Origen. He's in book 5, and Origen's in book 2. I'm sorry, book 4, Tertullian's book. But Hippolytus is a little younger than, he's like 15 years younger than Tertullian, and like 15 years older than Origen, okay? And Hippolytus writes Refutation of All Heresies, amazing book. I recommend everybody read it. I disagree with some of the stuff he says about Heraclitus, but it is a solid encyclopedia of Greek philosophical thought and of paganism, the mystery cults, and Gnosticism. All the cults that existed up until his day. And then he trashes Heraclitus because Callistus of Rome, who's his opponent, is into modalism, which he traces back to a mixture of Heraclitus's philosophy, which I don't think he's correct in this. I think it's more Parmenidean, but he barely talks about Parmenides. And Parmenides, his philosophy was derivative of Heraclitus. So I just think he doesn't realize it's coming from Parmenides, because Parmenides influenced Socrates and Plato way more than Heraclitus did. Okay. Anyways. He is going to get into that, and then he is going to have exegetical works. He's got exegetical works on Genesis, Psalms, Proverbs, on Isaiah. He has one on Daniel. He has ones on Matthew and Luke. He does a complete breakdown of the book of Daniel and the end times prophecies in Daniel, and he specifically puts Daniel's 70th week out into the future. Okay, this guy is writing this probably somewhere between 200 and 220 AD. Okay, this is around 100 years after John the Apostle. He is taught by Irenaeus, who is taught by Polycarp, who is taught by John. So he is 2 people removed from John. He is not mixing in Greek philosophy. He has Daniel's 70th week in the future. He has a mid-trib rapture. He has the 2 witnesses in the first half and the Antichrist and the false prophet in the second half. Okay, they exist in the first half, but they're ruling in the second half. Okay. He doesn't have the image of the beast worked out so that they understand that the Antichrist is dead and he's actually living through the image of the beast. He doesn't have that worked out, and he has Enoch and Elijah as the 2 witnesses instead of Moses and Elijah. Other than that, I stand on almost everything he says. Okay? I did my own work independently and afterwards read his, and I was just like, oh, wow, this guy 100 years after John, who's 2 people removed from John. I mean, imagine that. Yeah, imagine being like, do you know what Wayne Grudem said? Well, I went to Wayne Grudem's school, and I was taught by the guy who was taught by Wayne Grudem's top student, so I think I know what Wayne Grudem meant better than most people. Well, imagine being that with the Apostle John. Do you think you know what John meant? Well, I was taught by the top student of John's top student, the last bishop that he handpicked, who he literally co-labored with for like 30 years. And then this guy knew this guy from when he was like a teenager all the way up until he was like, he died like 30 years later. And then this guy knew Justin Martyr, and then this guy knew Polycarp and Papias and stuff like this, and Papias knew two of the 70 elders, and I was taught by them. So yeah, I think I know better than most people. And he was literally, I don't care what anyone says, the two most known scholars from the year 200, or from between 200 and 250, are going to be Hippolytus and Origen. Hippolytus in the west and Origen in the east. Okay, Origen doesn't hold a candle up to Hippolytus in terms of knowledge, in terms of scriptural accuracy, and in terms of not being corrupted by Greek philosophy. Okay, read Hippolytus and read Origen and understand there are two different churches being built here. And this one is going to become the Roman Catholic Church, and the other one is going to become the Eastern Orthodox Church. Okay, he does get into Roman Catholic ritual legalism. Okay, not in these writings, but in this writing called the Apostolic Tradition, which is accredited to him. It's not in these writings because it's disputed whether he wrote it. Okay, but you read his stuff, and it is solid. Read it. Read all of this stuff. I mean, all of his stuff is probably going to be like 500 pages. Read it all. No, maybe like 700 or 800 pages. But read it all. It's all really good stuff, okay? But he's premillennial, mid-trib, two witnesses in the first half, Antichrist and the false prophet in the second half, okay? That's how these guys understood it, okay? We're in, this guy dies a martyr's death in 235 AD, okay? He was an elder for decades, so he probably wrote this years before that, and then he splits off with the Church of Rome because Callistus of Rome is into modalism, and he's a swindler, and he took the bishop's seat by guile, basically. And then that's when Hippolytus gets voted in as the legit bishop, but then they all get thrown into a death camp and they die, and they say that Hippolytus repented and went back to the one true church, and all this propaganda starts in the following generation. Okay, probably never happened. Hippolytus probably, it was literally like the two bishops removed from Callistus, and these guys were probably in a death camp together for Christ, and they probably personally reconciled. But I guarantee Hippolytus did not rescind his bishop's title to Callistus of Rome, because he writes in here pages upon pages about what a scammer Callistus of Rome is, and he's a swindler. He's like a 5 times removed unrepentant swindler. Okay, so read Hippolytus, and that's where you have your eschatology. But what you have then in the next generation after Origen, remember Origen dies like 15 years after Hippolytus, but Origen is running one school in Caesarea, and his brother is running the other in Alexandria, his little brother, okay? So whose theology do you think is going to trump the church in 100 years when you only have 2 Christian schools, and one's taught by Origen and the other's taught by Origen's brother? That's how bad this is, okay? Literally, you have, everybody's just trying to be the next Origen at this point. And in the next generation, you have the Origenists. You have guys like Gregory of Thaumaturgus. You have Dionysius as an Origenist. Alexander of Lycopolis, I don't know if he's an Origenist. Peter of Alexander was known as Little Origen, okay? Methodius speaks out against Origen, and he loses his bishop's title. They basically remove this guy as bishop because he speaks out against Origen as rejecting the resurrection of the dead, and he was right, okay? Arnobius is influenced by Clement, not Origen necessarily. There's evidence of him being influenced by Clement. Dionysius is he is going to be these are mostly bishops of Alexandria. So Peter of Alexandria, Alexander of Alexandria is going to be the guy who helps put forward the Nicene Creed. He's an Origenist. Gregory of Thaumaturgus. I mean, the whole next generation is mostly guys who are influenced by Origen and Clement, almost entirely. What happens is because Novatian and Hippolytus and Tertullian all get labeled, as schismatics, their stuff fades. And these guys who are the academics who are mixing in all the Greek philosophy and turning the church Gnostic, they keep getting more popular. And then by the time you get to the Council of Nicaea, the main influencer of Constantine himself is Eusebius, who is the guy who's running Origen's library and the remnants of his school. Okay? And so Eusebius basically gets the whole empire to go amil. That's where it comes from. And Eusebius is going to write his church history, which that's in the post-Nicene. This is NFPF, okay, NPNF, okay, volume 1, and you're going to have Eusebius's church history in here. and he is going to talk about Papias. And all you do, you guys, is Control F and put in Papias, okay? And listen, look at the writings of Papias, okay? This is where he talks about Papias, and you just click on it and read what he says about Papias, okay? And he's going to say that Papias was pre-mill, but he was stupid, basically, okay? He's going to say he was not enlightened like us, who have Origen's Gnostic, Platonic understanding of things, and he's going to speak against it. And this goes into the Roman Empire, basically, as the official history of the church. That's it, right there, okay? And it's not until about maybe 50 years later that Epiphanes of Salamis writes a counter history to his bullcrap history, and he knows Methodius, and he knows that Methodius was put down as bishop for legitimate criticisms of Origen, and he's very critical of Origen, and that leads to Origen becoming a heretic in the Roman Catholic Church, but not in the Eastern Orthodox Church. And all these, this split is slowly happening until it gets to the Great Schism, because the Origenists and the basically the Gnostics took over the academies and totally got the East to go Gnostic, while the Catholics are, I mean, they're basically Pharisees and Sadducees. Like, the Sadducees were all into Greek philosophy, not so much into the rituals. The Pharisees were very much into the rituals and legalism. And so the Roman Catholic Church is going to go Pharisaical, the Eastern Orthodox Church is going to go Sadduceical, and then they're going to split in around 1000 AD over iconoclasm. Because the Romans are literally worshiping idols, and then the Romans say, we say idols are okay. They change the Bible. They say we have Peter's seat, so we can do that. They literally changed the 10 Commandments to make idol worship okay, because they're praying to statues of Mary by this time, okay? It's a train wreck. The whole church is a train wreck, okay? Like, there was no, apart from what the apostles established, there was no official institution of Christianity that was like, there's the true church. You will not find it. You find just this train wreck of just bad ideas, mixtures of good ideas and bad ideas, guys with integrity but bad ideas versus guys with no integrity and bad ideas. Like, that's church history for you, because they got away from their roots and they didn't establish a canon for like 300 years. They didn't like sit down and say, okay, after the apostles died, what is our canon? What are scripture and what's not? They never did it. It was stupid that they didn't do it, but they didn't do it, okay? The Jews did it. I don't know why the Jews can have a canon and the Christians aren't. Like, should we have an apostolic canon? Yes, we should have an apostolic canon. If we're going to keep saying this is what the true apostolic church teaches, we should have an apostolic canon and not just keep saying it and having a bunch of diverse views that are all saying this is what the one true church teaches. Idiots. So anyways, in this next generation, you're going to have, not these guys. I'm going through these right now for my book that I'm writing, okay? You're going to have Lactantius is going to be the first guy who puts forward replacement theology. He is pre-mill, okay? He is more traditionalist pre-mill than these other guys because he's a better scholar than the people before him. He's not that influenced by Clement and Origen, but he does put forward the idea that God has permanently disowned the Jews and there's no future for the Jews, okay? So that's where your replacement theology that comes in, and it's not going to get fixed until this guy was the tutor to Constantine's son. Now, Constantine killed that son, but because he was the tutor to Constantine's son, you can guarantee the royal household had access to his writings, okay? Which means he's going to get popular, and that's where replacement theology is going to come in, and it's not going to get put down until dispensationalism comes in. So it basically becomes normalized in around the early 4th century, and it's not going to get fixed until the 19th century, okay? So you're going to have 1,500 years of replacement theology. And then not long after replacement theology get fixed, the Jews start going back to Israel, okay? Then you're going to have Victorinus is going to be the first guy who's going to say that the millennium is symbolic, okay? This is going to be somewhere around the early 4th century. So we're now over 200 years removed from John the Apostle before the first guy says the millennium is symbolic. But he's not saying it's symbolic because of hermeneutical reasons. He's saying it's symbolic because their timeline is off, because they have the Septuagint, and the Septuagint, if you go compare the Septuagint to the Masoretic text on the genealogies from Adam down to Abraham, the Septuagint adds 100 years for each guy's birthday, and I don't know why they do that. Maybe they think if these guys are 1,000 years old, he can't have a kid when he's 90 because that would make him like a 10-year-old. And they assume that they age, in to scale, and they think, oh, he can't have a kid when he's 30. That'd be like a 3-year-old having a kid because these guys are living to be, 900. Well, they take the ages and they add 100 to every age, and what you end up with is guys thinking they're in the year like 55 to 5800 by now, okay? And that's why they're saying that the millennium is not a literal millennium, because Victorinus is actually going to say they use the symbolic whole to represent the part, because they think there's only like 500 years left, and yet it says millennium. And so they're saying they're using a symbolic whole to represent the part because there's only a part of a millennium left until Christ comes. That's what they believe, okay? And they're not going to they're going to be on the Septuagint until you get to Jerome later that century, and he's going to start interacting with the Jews, and he's going to start getting them on. It's not the Masoretic text, but it's a non-Septuagint version of Hebrew, and that's going to go into the Latin Vulgate, and that's going to be closer to what we have today, which is based on the Masoretic text. So they're going to get off those Septuagint dates, and then that's when they start believing that the millennium is literal, but they still believe, because Lactantius is the one that says it starts with Christ's first advent, okay? Now the Bible says the millennium starts when Christ returns in his second advent, very clearly. He returns, he raptures all the saints, and then Satan is bound and cast in the bottomless pit, and literally the dead are raised right as Satan's cast into the bottomless pit and bound, okay? The dead are raised. Well, these guys, remember, they don't believe in a literal bodily resurrection of the dead, so they're making that symbolic, and they're saying that's us being regenerated, rather than, remember, there's two usages of the word regeneration in the Bible. One talks about, in the regeneration you will sit on 12 thrones. That's in Matthew 19. And that regeneration is the resurrection of the dead. And then there's the regeneration of your inner man, which is in Titus 3:5, where he says you're saved through the washing and regeneration and renewing of the Holy Spirit, okay? Well, they're sitting on 12 thrones, because if you read Revelation chapter 20, Jesus says you will sit on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel in the regeneration, because when you read Revelation chapter 20, you read an angel gets the bottomless pit, he grabs the devil and binds him for 1,000 years, and then I saw thrones and them that sat upon them. There's them sitting on 12 thrones, and judgment was given to them. Remember, Jesus says in the regeneration you will sit on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel, and there's the thrones sat up and them sitting on them and judgment given to them. That's the apostles. That's the resurrected apostles, okay? And then he says, I saw the souls of those that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, that have not worshipped the beast. These are the people who weren't resurrection raptured because they needed to be left behind to give a testimony because they were lukewarm, okay? And they didn't receive the mark of the beast, and they lived and reigned with Christ. So he's resurrecting the people, just the people who testified to Christ and didn't take the mark of the beast, okay? Everybody else has already been resurrected and raptured at the midpoint, okay? But these people who got their heads chopped off for not worshiping the image of the beast after that need to get resurrected, okay? And so you see, there's regeneration. He says, in the regeneration you will sit on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. That's Matthew 19. That's one usage of regeneration. Well, what the Origenists are going to do is they're going to take both those regenerations and say one symbolic of the other. And so they don't believe in a bodily resurrection. And so they're going to say that it's that symbolic of Christ's first advent, and then they're going to say the millennium is the whole of the part. Well, when they get their millennial count straightened out by Jerome in the Latin Vulgate, because remember, these guys are Victorinus, I think he's in the West. I could be wrong. But usually if they have US at the end, the Urbanus, Valentinius, Lactantius, that's Latin. They're gonna be in the West, okay? Now, they get their millennium straightened out, but they keep the idea that it's symbolic of Christ's first advent because they got that from the Origenists, okay? And so what happens is around 1000 AD, they think the end of the world's coming, okay? Well, it doesn't come, but after that, the Great Schism happens. It doesn't come, but after that, that's when the popes start asserting really loud and clear that we're the new Peter. We're ruling and reigning. We're Christendom. Okay, so the millennium is over. We're now post-millennial. Okay, And that's where postmillennialism is going to come from. It's not literally because they think the millennium is figurative for whatever. It's because they think 1,000 years has come and gone since Christ, and they think the 1,000 years started with Christ's first coming, and now it's over. So now we're in the postmillennial age, and we're taking over the world for Christ. Okay? And the popes are going to start asserting themselves as the new Peter and the vicar of Christ on earth, and we are ruling and reigning now. Okay? And what you have in the East is the East is getting taken over by Islam, while the West is basically merging with the Frankish kingdoms and creating the Holy Roman Empire, and they're saying we're going to eventually take over the world. And not long after that, they start doing the Crusades, okay? Because they literally believe it's time now to rule and reign over the earth, because the symbolic millennium's over. We're rolling out the kingdom now, okay? And that's where you're going to get your Templar Knights and your Hospitallers and your Crusaders, and they're going to have the Crusader states in Jerusalem, because they literally think they're in the last days, okay? And they're taking over the world. God wills it. And they're fighting the devil, and that's Islam now, okay? So this is going to go on for years, and obviously the Crusades are going to come and go. They're going to fail. These guys are not going to take over the world. They're not going to usher in the kingdom come. But what ends up happening is, after the bubonic plague, they basically decided we're going to go rediscover the New World and pretend we discovered it for the first time, even though there's 25 million people here. We're going to pretend we discovered it, okay? And they're going to go over there, and they're looking for trade routes to the Indies, because here's why. They lost the Crusades, okay? And now the Muslims completely controlled their trade to all the spices of India that they were able to get their hands on when they controlled the Crusader states, okay? When they controlled the Crusader states, they were able to send Marco Polo to China. They were able to get in touch with the sea routes that were connecting with Eilat, which is on the bottom of the fork in the Red Sea, and one connects to Israel. It's the Sinai Peninsula right here. And they were able to connect with those traders that would come from India and get all those spices back to Europe. And Europeans are like, that's good, because our moldy, crappy food tastes a lot better with a little pepper on it. And that's why Europeans have black pepper on everything. It comes from India, okay? And they start putting salt and pepper on stuff, and they're like, oh, this preserves it, and it tastes better, and it's not so crappy. So they put salt and pepper on everything, okay? And when they lose that, the Muslims have a lock on it, they have a monopoly on it, and they want to get back to that spice. And so that's when Columbus gets sent to the other side of the earth to go get figure out a better route to get to the Indies and get that spice, okay? Because that spice is worth munties, okay? And so that's when he lands on the Western Hemisphere and forgot. Turns out Atlantis didn't sink into the sea, it actually just moved over. And here it is. And there's 25 million people here, but I'm going to say I discovered it. And that's what they do, because the Pope is commissioning Portugal and Spain and saying, go conquer the world for Jesus. Portugal, you get the eastern part. Spain, you get the western part. Go do it up. And Portugal gets Brazil, but pretty much Spain gets everything else. And then the English are going to compete with them after the Reformation, and they're going to get a bunch of stuff, and the Dutch are going to get a bunch of stuff in competition with them, and they're going to start spreading their different doctrines. Well, the Reformation is going to happen, and the first thing that comes out of the Reformation in terms of eschatology are people saying that the Pope is the Antichrist and we're in the end times now. Okay? They've had the bubonic plague, they've had the Mongols raiding, and the Mongols is kind of like a Gog-Magog. Okay? In fact, they're the actual nations of Gog-Magog. That's the Mongols and the Turks that are raiding, okay? They're taking over everything in the east. It looks like Gog-Magog. And so they're going to start asserting that the Pope is the Antichrist, and that's Gog-Magog. Those are the kings of the east. That's Antichrist and kings of the east. And these guys are basically going to start putting forward stuff more figurative, because they're able to use allegory, and they're not trying to be specific with their prophecies. They're just trying to attack the Roman Catholic Church, and mostly it's going to be Presbyterians and Lutherans that do that, but mostly Presbyterians, okay? And then you're going to have, out of the Anabaptists, you're going to have these Zwickau prophets, because the Anabaptists are getting killed by everybody, and so they're going to say we're in the last days now, and they're going to have almost like pseudo-Montanist prophecies start popping up that are saying Jesus is going to come any day now, because that's why we're all getting murdered, because it's the last days. Okay, we're the true church. We're getting murdered. It's the last days. The Anabaptists are eventually going to become the Baptists and the Amish and the Mennonites, which is weird. Your Amish and your Mennonites used to be super into eschatology. And then they're going to be influenced, the Pietists, the Methodists, to become eventually the Wesleyans and the Holiness movement. and the Quakers and Shakers. Okay, and these people are all going to come over to America, and they're going to start mixing and dipping and dabbing in different stuff. And then you're going to have out of the Church of England, this is around the 1700s, Derby is going to be part of the Brethren community, the Plymouth Brethren, and this group is going to basically start to assert dispensationalism. Okay, so this is a breakaway Congregationalist group of the Anglican Church called the Brethren, and in that group, Derby is going to start to teach dispensationalism. Now, I haven't done hardcore research on this history yet. I'm going to do that when I get to that part of my church history book. So I'm just going to give you the generalized view, okay? Essentially, Derby is coming up with his dispensational system, and it's a historical hermeneutical system to replace covenant theology. Covenant theology is basically going to say that, remember, these are both emerging systems. These are not like this is what the church always held and then this new thing came about. The reformers are going to try to tell you that because the reformers just systematically lie all the time in their propagandas, okay? But Derby is basically going to come up with a counter theory. He's a Calvinist too, but it's a counter theory to covenant theology. They're both emerging theories. And covenant theology is basically going to say that the new covenant started with Adam, the first Adam. And Darby's going to be like, no, the new covenant started with Christ. Okay, Darby's more right than they are, but then Darby's going to come up with 7 covenants and say that, you had the covenant of innocence, then you had the covenant of government or conscience, then you had the covenant of government, then you had the covenant of the Abrahamic covenant, then the Mosaic covenant, and then the new covenant. And the truth is no, you all only ever had the old new covenant. You had promises that God made to Eve. You had promises that God made to Noah. And Noah had a covenant not to flood the earth again. But this is not a covenant in terms of a religious relationship with God. This is just God saying, I promise not to flood the earth again. From now on, if people, kill them, because this violence thing is getting out of control. And start eating meat. Okay? That's pretty much it. Okay? Adam and Eve's covenant is, he's like, don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And you could say, well, that's a type of the law. Yes, it's a type of the law. And then the promise to Eve of the serpent being crushed is a type of the new covenant. Adam had a curse to work until he died. That's a type of the old covenant, okay? But the new covenant doesn't start till Christ. That's why Christ calls it the new covenant in my blood, okay? It doesn't start until Christ sheds his blood. The old covenant was inaugurated with the Passover lamb, and then again with the bulls at Mount Sinai. The new covenant is inaugurated with Christ's death. And Paul makes this very clear in Hebrews. He says that the new covenant has to be ratified by blood. The New Testament has to be ratified by the death of the testator. So before Christ died, you didn't have a new covenant. Well, the Calvinists are going to change Bibles just as bad as the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're going to start fudging translations and stuff and make it sound like Christ was crucified before the foundation of the world. He died already. It was an eternal thing. It was done in eternity. This is bullcrap. It did not happen in eternity. It happened in time. Christ did not die because a God can't die. A God can't shed his blood. How can Christ be crucified before the foundations of the world? Let's think about that. How can he be crucified before the foundations of the world if there's no crucifixion and there's no death yet? How can he die for our sins when there's no death? And the answer is he can't. Okay? But they're going to misinterpret stuff. And they're going to realize, no, it's the Lamb's Book of Life that was written from the foundation of the world, okay? So he calls it in the book of Revelation, the book of life of the Lamb that was slain from the foundations of the world. And they're going to change that to say it's the book of the Lamb who was slain before the foundation of the world. They're going to change the Bibles, okay? Now listen, Christ wasn't crucified before the foundation of the world. They're going to start talking about a deal that God and Jesus made in eternity, and Christ died for our sins before the foundation of the world. That's bull crap. Did not happen. He's talking about the Lamb's Book of Life, okay? The book. So what it is God has a book of life where he records every person who lives in that book of life, and he blots you out for unbelief, or if he curses you, he's going to blot you out of the book of life, okay? And if that book then gets bought by Christ, okay? And so when Christ, after the Lamb slain, is introduced in the Bible, It's going to be called the Book of Life of the Lamb that was slain. And when he talks about it, he says, anyone whose name is not found written in the Book of Life of the Lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world. In other words, put some commas there and go, this is what it's called, the Book of Life of the Lamb that was slain. In other words, it's the Lamb's Book of Life. Okay? It belongs to him now. Anyone who's not found in that book, which was recorded from the foundations of the world, is going to get thrown into the lake of fire. Well, they're going to corrupt the doctrine and say that the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world. Did not happen. That's not true. That's not what the Bible says. Christ was crucified in time. The Lamb was slain in time. The new covenant began in time. That's why it's new. Okay? You don't have old and new in eternity. You just have eternity. Okay? You don't have eternity past. There's no eternity past. You just have eternity. Okay? The new covenant began when Christ shed his blood on Calvary. Period. Darby's going to be more right than the covenant theologians are, but he's going to get his own stuff wrong because he has too many dispensations in there. And then he's going to come up with arbitrary rules that basically say that God can't deal with Israel until we're gone. Why? God started grafting in the Gentiles when the Jews were still here. 70 AD didn't happen until they were spreading the gospel for 35 years. So why could you not have the two side by side in the end times? That's stupid. It's stupid, 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 stupid. Okay, but they would do this all the time because these guys were philosophers. They were groomed up in philosophy, and philosophers would come up with arbitrary reasons why the Bible must be interpreted this way. Like they would say, the amillennialists would say, well, we understand that Revelation is apocalyptic literature, and so therefore the 1,000 years cannot be literal. Nobody made those arguments back in the day. They didn't. They just said, we're interpreting it through the eyes of Plato, and therefore the 1,000 years is not literal. Or they would say, because we're in the year 5500 and he's coming in 6000, the 1,000 years is not literal. Nobody ever came up with this idea of apocalyptic genres dictating that you must interpret it symbolically. That stupid idea was a post hoc rationalization that came in probably the 18 or 1900s, probably the 20th century. You're going to find a lot of ideas that you're being taught in seminaries and Bible colleges as if we've always known it this way, actually just got invented in the 20th century. Okay? And the church has always done this. You can go back to these guys and they're going to say, this is what the apostles always taught, and they're going to find stuff that I can show you from a writing that came 100 years before this and 100 years after the apostles, and there's no evidence of it in the apostles. Okay? They always did this. It's the bootleg false authority kind of argument, okay? The true and learned scholars all know that blah, blah, blah that I just made up. Oh, the true and learned scholars, you say, and the stupid people get duped by that. Oh, that makes sense. The true and learned scholars. Well, I don't want to be dumb. This is what I would hear in college. All mainstream scientists believe in global warming. That's what they would tell us. Now it's climate change because, turns out some of it is cooling. So it's warming some places and cooling other places. You mean there's a pole wobble? No. All mainstream scientists believe in global warming. What the frick is a mainstream scientist? Scientists that agree with global warming are mainstream scientists. Oh, like a circle. It's called circular reasoning, okay? It's a false appeal to authority, okay? And they would do stuff like this. Well, the amillennialists are going to say you can't interpret apocalyptic literature literally, and Darby and the post-Reformationists, which are very anti-allegorical because the Roman Catholics were so allegorical, are going to say, no, you can only interpret things literally. And that's where the split's going to be. The amillennialist camp is going to say you have to interpret the book of Revelation allegorically, and the dispensationalists are going to say, no, you can only interpret it literally. Okay? And so they're going to come up with over-literalized eschatology. Okay? And they're going to come up with an eschatology that says, basically, if Jesus says you don't know the day or the hour, that doesn't mean you can't predict the exact time. Day and hour is pretty specific, right? He's saying you can't predict the exact time, but here's a bunch of signs that are going to lead up to it. Well, they're going to take that very literally, and they're going to say, if you can't know the day or the hour, that can only mean that Christ comes without any preceding signs. And they're going to have this false doctrine called imminency, okay? You can't know the day or the hour, therefore, and Jesus Christ comes at an hour you think not. There you go. What does that mean? It means watch and wait and look for the signs and always be prepared for Christ's coming, because don't think you can just predict the date and say, oh, it's going to be 85 years in the future so I can keep sleeping with my girlfriend today. Don't think like that. This is what Jesus is teaching. Don't get lazy because you think it's a long way off. It's going to come in an hour you think not. And he purposely obscured it so you wouldn't understand. The Holy Spirit purposely obscured it. Okay? That's why you have all these people coming out with this Hosea prophecy about 2 days. Now, I just discovered that in 2014. Okay? You have all these people discovering this prophecy that was in the Bible the whole time. Why did nobody see it after 2 days? Because the early church totally believed in the day as a 1,000-year thing. You can find it in Barnabas, you can find it in Lactantius, you can find it in Hippolytus, okay? They totally believe that a day with the Lord is 1,000 years, okay? That they believe the millennium was that, okay? So why did they not see the 2 days in Hosea and say it's 2,000 years later? I don't know. Maybe it's because all their Bibles were based on the Septuagint and they didn't think there'd be space for 2,000 years. Probably that's the reason why, okay? But here's this prophecy that is telling you how long it's going to be between Christ's first coming and Christ's second coming. And all this stuff that you see on Messiah 2030 is in my book because I figured all this stuff out like 8 years ago. Okay? That's why the first thing I did when I checked out Messiah 30 is to see if these guys were getting this from my book. Because I've never seen it published before I published my book. I don't know where they got it. Maybe they got it from an independent camp. Maybe they got some stuff for me and some for the other. Maybe the whole thing was written by AI. Who knows? I don't know who Messiah 2030 is. I have no idea. For all I know, these guys literally just had an AI scour the internet and say, give me eschatology. And that's what it came up with. I don't know. I have no idea. Okay? But that's the birth of premillennial eschatology, okay? So now you go from the ancient church, which had mid-trib, Daniel's 70th week in the future, premillennial eschatology, to the messed up, jacked up, not really consistent amillennial eschatology of the Middle Ages, to now you're going to have an emergence of two camps around the 1800s, where you're going to have dispensationalism, which is where pre-trib rapture comes from, and then amillennialism is going to, they're going to try to be more systematic, and they're going to come up with their fake BS rules about apocalyptic genre, okay? Those are your two camps. And those two camps are going to pretty much exist alone until you get to about the end of the 20th century. The mid-trib and the post-trib are going to come up because the dispensationalists are going to have these in Niagara Falls, Canada, these Niagara conferences. Okay, so you're going to have this Niagara conference in the early 1800s, it looks like. 100 years ago this summer, the Niagara Bible Conference held its last meeting, okay? So this was written in 2000. So apparently it was into the late 1800s, or early 1800s to early 1900s, okay? And you're going to have this Niagara Bible Conference. Remember, Darbyism is just starting to take off because Darby was like late 1700s, okay? And you're going to have basically people arguing pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. This Niagara conference is going to be where they're debating that, okay? And these people are, again, these are people who are descended from the Plymouth Brethren in Darby's group, okay? And they're going to have this conference, and you're going to have all three positions espoused, but what's going to win out is going to be pre-trib because that was Darby's position, okay? And Darby and Schofield are going to popularize the pre-trib position with a Schofield Reference Bible, and that is going to eventually turn to that becoming the official position of Dallas, is it Dallas Theological Seminary, I think, and then Liberty University, okay? Those are going to be the main two, and now it's the official position of Moody, okay? So when you got Moody Bible, Liberty University, and Dallas Theological Seminary, which are pretty much the main evangelical seminaries, are all pumping pre-trib. Pre-trib's going to get really popular, okay? And so out of Dallas Theological Seminary, you're going to get Dwight D. Pentecost, and this is a book I read when I was in my mid-20s. Things to Come. It's like an 800-page book on eschatology. It's really good. I don't land on all its positions, but in terms of the research and a number of the scriptures it pulls together, it's really good, okay? He wrote it in 1958, okay? So in the 1900s, this eschatology is going to dominate. Then you're going to have Charles Ryrie, okay? And he's going to come up with the Ryrie Study Bible, okay? Now, the Schofield Reference Bible was pretty much the first Bible with footnotes and a commentary on it in the U.S., okay? It's going to basically be based on the King James, but Darby's going to have his own translation. Schofield Reference Bible, I don't know if that's Darby's translation. Let me look that up. Okay, so it uses the King James Version, okay? So the King James Version is the most popular Bible, and Schofield is going to come up with the first Bible with footnotes on it, okay, with commentaries in it, okay? And he's going to print that in 1909, and that is going to become how people, that's where all your quote-unquote study Bibles come from, okay, is the Schofield Reference Bible. So guess how fast the Pre-Trib is going to get popular. This is the first time you ever have an archaic King James Bible in the 20th century with notes that help you read the Bible, okay? Now, I think you had chain reference Bibles, which are basically Bibles with columns that are going to give you cross references in the center column. I think those existed. Let me see. Okay, so at the same time, it looks like 1908. Remember, this is 1909. You're getting the first chain reference Bibles, okay? Those are Bibles that have, looks like this was Thompson Publishing, okay? Thompson Publishing is going to be a, these are going to be Bibles that are going to have cross references in the center column, okay? That's called a chain reference Bible, okay? And so you're going to have Schofield's Bible that has commentary on it and the chain reference Bible. Well, if the chain reference Bible won out, you would have you would have just had people looking back and forth in their Bible and getting way smarter with their Bible. But the reference Bible that just tells you what to think, or the commentary Bibles that just tell you what to think underneath the page, is a lot easier than looking back and forth and trying to discern passages for yourself. So guess what won out? The Schofield Reference Bible. And then in the 1950s, you had Charles Ryrie come up with a study Bible, which was also dispensationalist. And Charles Ryrie was a smart dude. He was died in 2016, okay? He was from Dallas Theological Seminary, so was Dwight D. Pentecost, and he was a smart dude. I was given Charles Ryrie American Standard Study Bible, and this is also what comes out of this movement, is the New American Standard, okay? The New American Standard is Lockman Publishing Foundation, which is pretty much the publishing company for the Southern Baptists, okay? And the Southern Baptists are the biggest denomination in the U.S. And so what ends up happening is you have this guy now putting a pre-trib dispensational commentary on the official Bible because now we're away from King James and Old Archaic English, and we're now onto critical text. And we have the American Standard, which is based off the King James. It's just Americanized based on Webster's Dictionary. And then that becomes the New American, which is based on the critical text. And that is considered the new, latest, and greatest Bible. And Ryrie is going to have, he's going to have a KJV study Bible. He's going to have a American Standard study Bible. And they're going to start producing Bibles, which is the New American Standard, the new, greatest, and best, with this dispensational commentary on them. That's the Bible that my parents got for me when I was 12 years old. I wasn't saved, but that's why I was so into eschatology, because this guy has all kinds of eschatology in his notes, okay? So that's why the pre-trib is going to dominate, and it's going to keep dominating until you get to the end of the 20th century, okay? And then you're going to get to, and Marv Rosenthal is going to, he's a Baptist, he is previously a dispensationalist, and he's going to come out of that, and he's going to come up with a pre-wrath theory. Marv Rosenthal just died in 2022, okay? Now, he is going to have a debate with Dave Hunt, Dave Hunt is a good guy. He's a good discernment guy. I would recommend listening to his stuff. He is brilliant. Dave Hunt is brilliant. He rides A Woman Rides a Beast. He talks about psychology and how it's perverting the church, okay? He is brilliant, but he's a pre-tribber, okay? And he's a really solid anti-Calvinist. He has a book called What Love Is This? It's against Calvinism, okay? Well, Marv Rosenthal is going to get on a radio broadcast with him, and he's going to espouse his pre-wrath theory. And that is going to be picked up by Charles Cooper. This is all like late 90s, early 20th century. This is very new stuff, okay? No, that's not him. This is Charles Cooper. He writes a book called God's Elect in the Great Tribulation. He is going to be the main proponent of Marv Rosenthal's theory going forward after that until it gets picked up by Dr. Alan Kirshner. And I've actually met him in person. I gave him one of the early copies of my book. He's going to be the first PhD to start putting forward the pre-wrath theory. And as far as these guys go, I would say, generally speaking, when it comes to discernment and not getting caught up in false doctrine and trying to basically be on the side of evangelism and truth over ecumenism and stuff like that, these guys are home team. Okay, I don't agree with their theory. I don't agree with their theory at all. But generally speaking, I would stand by most of these guys for their Christian character. Okay, now I met Alan Kirshner after I wrote my book. This was in 2018. And he was with this guy, Ryan Habana. And Ryan Habana is a pastor in... No, that's not him. Ryan Habana is going to tour with, they do this Minnesota Bible Prophecy Conference, and Ryan Habana is going to speak against the idea that the fig tree is Israel. So he writes a book called The Parable of the Fig Tree and shows how this dispensational idea that the fig tree is Israel. This was not, I don't think this was Darby's idea, but it came later. This is where you get 88 reasons for 88 and all the date setting. All the date setting that you've ever had in history has come from dispensationalists who believe that Israel is the fig tree. I say that the temple is the fig tree in the fig tree prophecy. Ryan says the fig tree is just a metaphor. Okay, agree to disagree. These guys are good guys. Okay, they're not heretics. They're not anything. We just disagree on an interpretive point. Okay, but he's going to start speaking out against that because all of your date setting comes from people who think, well, the fig tree is the birth of Israel, and they're either going to start from the birth of Israel in 1948 or when they got the temple in 1949, and they're going to say, when he says this generation, that's either 40 or 70 years after that, depending on how long you think a generation is. And that's why from 48 to 88, that's why they got the book 88 Reasons Why Jesus is going to come in 1988. And all of your theories, your date-setting theories, are going to be built around this. Maybe there's a couple that aren't, but the people who try to date set, they think, this fig tree is supposed to tell you how long it's going to be till Christ comes back. When it's like, no, Hosea 2 is going to tell you when Christ is going to come back. It's 2 days after he leaves. It's 2,000 years after he leaves. Well, when did he leave? 33 AD. So when is he going to get back? Anytime after 33 AD. Okay? Could be 50 years after 33 AD. But it's got to be after. It says, after 2 days he will raise us up and we will live in his sight. So it's got to be after 33 AD. Okay? That's why Messiah 2030 is so dangerous. Because it has to be after 33 AD. That's when the crucifixion happened. That's when Christ ascended into heaven. And Hosea 2 says 2 days after he left. And these guys are shifting it. They're shifting it to 2030. And they're saying after 2 days, and they're making it 2 days after Christ starts to minister instead of after Christ leaves and returns to heaven. Okay? And that's why it's dangerous, because the Antichrist is going to come before Christ, and you've got people lined up to view the Antichrist as Christ. Okay? Anyways, Ryan Habana. I meet him. This is in 2018. I write my book. It's a crap copy. Alan Kirshner probably has it, and he probably is like, this is horrible writing. This guy's not a scholar. It sucks. Okay? My writing sucks compared to my current book. Remember, I've had like 13 or 14 re-edits of that book since 2018. I am not a professional writer. I had not gone to seminary. I was not trained for this. I just knew that I had 13 weeks of PowerPoint slides, 13 weeks of 2-hour sessions of eschatology, and the stuff that I was saying was coming to pass. And so that's when I decided to write my book, okay? I wrote it while I was starting my technical recruiting business over the course of the original version was about 6 weeks, okay? Then I did a re-edit of it, and it's the second version of it that I gave to Alan Kirshner, okay? And let's see here. I'm looking for my Bible studies and PowerPoints. Oh, look at this. This was the original Bible study that I did in that church, the end from the beginning. No, that's not even it. That's not even it. That's not even the original, but that's closer to it. Okay, the original was blue. I don't know where it is. It's probably on a Google Drive somewhere. This is one that I did for some friends of mine in North Carolina, and I just walked them through the whole book of Revelation. Maybe I'll find some way to post these so people can grab them. But like, this is just, I've been teaching eschatology, and I mean thoroughly teaching it now for about 10 years. Okay. This is basically taking you through the whole book of Revelation. Okay. So when the stuff I was predicting in my teaching started to come to pass, that's when I wrote my book. Okay. And before I wrote my eschatology, I had this book in my head called Millennium Underground. And Millennium Underground was all about this story that I was going to write that takes place in the millennium about the people who went underground at the sixth seal, coming back up and recorrupting the earth. And it was basically going to have a heroine in it who gets saved at the end, okay? I never wrote the book. I literally wrote the introduction to this book and had basically World War III going on. I kid you not, World War III going on, everybody being confined to their homes, a pandemic going on, and people getting shipments from Amazon Prime. This is in 2013 I wrote this, okay? And people getting shipments from Amazon Prime because after 7 p.m. you were not allowed to be outside your house unless you were an Amazon Prime driver, okay? And that's when they went underground, and Christians were disappearing, and a pandemic was happening, and World War III was happening, and then they nuked the entrances to the underground tunnels in order to keep people from going underground. This is the intro to my book, Millennium Underground, okay? And it was based on that I knew that I needed to write an eschatology, because I need to be able to reference what happened in history, which is in our future, but it's going to be in their past. And so that's what led me to write my Revelation book. So this was the Bible prophecy series I did the second time through. So I did this original one, I think it was like in 2015 or 2016 in the summer, and then this is in 2017 where I taught through, it was like 13 or 18 weeks on eschatology. And basically what I did is I took these guys through about 6 or 8 weeks of prophecies that were already fulfilled. I taught them how to interpret prophecy. I taught them all these different kinds of prophecy, the different kinds of types, and different kinds of fulfillments I had. And this is basically what led to the appendix of my book. Okay, that's the more crystallized version of it. Okay. I did this without training. I did this without anyone else. Again, most of my influences by the time that I had this had been Chris White, who was getting his stuff from his Islam. He was the one who was showing you that the Antichrist is going to be a Jew. Joel Richardson had been teaching. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about Joel Richardson. Joel Richardson pops up in after 9/11. Okay, out of left field, he pops up. 2 guys pop up. Him and Waleed Chabot. Waleed Chabot is one of 2 guys, and I forget the other guy, but I met him at church once, who were claiming to be ex-Islamic terrorists coming out of the Middle East, claiming that the Middle East, the gospel spreading like wildfire, and they're totally wanted men in the Middle East. And these guys would go around conning money off of churches, telling tall tales about how they used to be terrorists. And one of these guys is saying how he knew Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi and Osama bin Laden, and just everybody. He was like, they call him the Forrest Gump of the Middle East because he apparently knew everybody, okay? And he was just a tall tale teller. And Waleed Chabot was just a tall tale teller. He was actually a Catholic. and he was claiming he was an ex-Muslim terrorist. And Joel Richardson used to tour with Waleed Chabot selling this Islamic Antichrist theory. And that pops up after 9/11 because obviously 9/11 was all about finding a new boogeyman to replace the communists after the Soviet Union fell. And so we can keep perpetuating the military-industrial complex that is the U.S. and their interventionist policies all over the world, okay? If you don't believe me, go watch The Lone Gunman. You don't believe that? That is not my theory, okay? This is the Lone Gunman. The X-Men show, okay? You can watch this on YouTube, okay? The Lone Gunman, okay? This is an X-Files spinoff, and this look at when this recording is August 15, 2020. Oh, you know when this show aired? It's about a plane flying into World Trade Center to re-kickstart the military-industrial complex after the Cold War. This aired 3 months before 9/11 on Fox. Okay, watch it. Conspiracies are real, y'all. Okay, this is why I spent years stuck in conspiracy theories, because I couldn't get people to listen to me. They made a show where 9/11 happened, and then 9/11 happened in real life 3 days later. You think the Simpsons are bad? Watch this show, The Lone Gunman. It's a 44-minute episode. They canceled this show. They canceled this series lickety split because these guys flat out told you 9/11 was going to happen 3 months before it happened. Okay, just watch it. Anyways, after 9/11, obviously anyone who's promoting Islam as the boogeyman is going to get props. And so what happens? Fox News, which is a total propaganda channel, it is owned by the Saudis. Okay, Arabs own it. Fox News is owned by Arabs. Okay. Joel Richardson starts coming on with Glenn Beck and starts explaining how the real Antichrist is a Muslim. Okay, and this is where the Islamic Antichrist theory comes from. It's him and Waleed Chabot. He's touring with Waleed Chabot, and then when Waleed Chabot gets found out as a con man who was never really an Islamic terrorist, he's going to start distancing himself from Waleed Chabot. And he was known as Glenn Beck's prophet. Okay, that's who he was known as, okay? Because this guy was basically coming up with all this Islamic Antichrist theory. I do not like Joel Richardson. I have no problem saying I don't trust him at all, okay? He is a con man, okay? Is he genuinely born again and just a liar? Can you be? I don't know. But this guy gets his Bible degree from some school, and I traced it down at some point in time because he mentions it on one of his shows. It's a guy who's a charismatic Calvinist. That's who he was taught by, okay? And that's where he gets his Bible degree from. Now, he gives his salvation testimony. Maybe he's legit. I don't know. But he comes up with this Islamic Antichrist theory out of thin air, okay? Not from Scripture. And he starts reinterpreting Daniel's statue, which literally from the 2nd century onward, everything we ever have written from the 2nd century onward has Daniel's statue representing 4 kingdoms, This statue, every single one, I mean, you can go back to Hippolytus and Irenaeus. Every single person who has ever interpreted Daniel before Joel Richardson said that these statues and the 4 beasts of Daniel represented Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then a last days divided Rome. They always interpreted the feet of iron and clay being a reiteration of the Roman Empire. Well, Joel Richardson is going to start coming up with theories that it's Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. He's going to just totally skip Rome and then say it's the Islamic Caliphate. Okay? And his arguments are dumb, ditty, stupid. He's basically, this is what his theory is based on. He basically says, all the nations being prophesied against in Israel are now Islamic, so therefore the Antichrist is Islamic. That's his base theory. That is so stupid. And he gets it from Waleed Chabot. Waleed Chabot says it, okay? Now let's think about that. All of the nations in Israel's history are are now Islamic. Is that true? No. You have churches. You have Christianity in Egypt. You have Christianity in Ethiopia. You have Christianity in Assyria. These were all Christian for hundreds of years before they became Islamic, and that's not the official religion of all the people. That's just the official religion of the state. Okay? So this is stupid. This is stupid to just say this in the first place. Second of all, when you get to Daniel 2, when this prophecy is given, he talks about Christ's kingdom being set up in these kings, and he's literally talking about the two iterations of the Roman Empire, because his spiritual kingdom starts getting set up in the first one. His physical kingdom is going to get set up in the second one, and that's why it's going to say, in the days of these kings, a kingdom will be set up. Okay. Now, you can only translate that one of two ways. You can translate it as fulfilled, dually fulfilled in the two Roman empires, or fulfilled in the toes of iron and clay. Okay? Now, the clay he calls potter's clay. Okay? Potter's clay. And this is really important. This means the potter's clay represents the Jews. So this means this divided Roman Empire, partly strong and partly brittle, is going to be, and if you read Daniel, what he says about the Antichrist, he says he comes to power with the help of a small people. That's the Jews. Okay? He says he deals treacherously with those who forsake the covenant. That's the Jews. Okay? And it's literally a phrase for the covenant that is only ever used once in the Bible. Okay? It talks about the Holy Covenant. And that Holy Covenant is only used once, and that's by John the Baptist's dad when he's prophesying about John the Baptist basically bringing people into the new covenant. Okay? So he's talking about those who forsake the new covenant. The Jews that forsake the new covenant are going to help the Antichrist come to power. Okay? That is literally the interpretation of Daniel, and it's always been the interpretation of Daniel. You can read this in Hippolytus and Papias and guys like this who say how the Antichrist is going to endear himself to the Jews by building up the temple. Okay? You can read Barnabas, who says the same people who tore down the temple are going to be rebuild it. And those were Greek and Macedonian legions who tore down the temple, okay? Which is where the Antichrist comes from. The Antichrist himself comes from the former dispersions of Alexander's empire, but the government is a revival of the Roman Empire. And that has been pretty much canon in terms of Christian thought. All Christian thought. Nobody has ever disputed this, including the amillennialists, until Joel Richardson after 9/11, okay? Now, 9/11's come and gone, and I don't know if you noticed this, but Islam is not the threat and big bad boogeyman that's ending the world that everyone said it was going to be. Okay, we have bigger fish to fry in Russia, in China, in New Age technocracy. The Arabs are now getting along with the Jews. Okay, so Joel Richardson's theory should have been crap. In fact, Joel Richardson himself, if he literally was listed as an anti-Islamist, he is running tours now to Saudi Arabia, to the biblical Mount Sinai. He is personally walking through Saudi Arabia. So if Islam's so scary, and he's the guy who literally popularized the theory that the Antichrist is going to come from Islam, then why is literally the stewards of Mecca allowing him to run tours on their land? And the answer is because this guy is not, I don't know who he's hooked up with. All I know is he's got a Mormon stamp of approval. He used to have this Melchizedek symbol on his website and on his YouTube page, which is literally a Mormon symbol. It's the Melchizedek priesthood symbol. Came from the Mormons. He was all over Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck started making him popular. Then he went on Sid Ross at Supernatural and the run-of-the-mill televangelist shows. That's how he got popular. And now he's FAI Studios is making him popular. Okay. His theory is crap, okay? And he gets on and he's going to debate Joel Richardson and Chris White, okay? He's going to debate Chris White because Chris White is going to say that, no, definitely the Antichrist is a Jew. You can get this right here on
Hi, I'm Derek
Joel Richardson's channel, okay? You can watch this. He's going to debate Chris White. And Chris White is going to say, no, definitely the scriptures teach that the Antichrist is going to be at least a Jewish pretender, either a Jew or a Jewish pretender. Now, the ancient church, Hippolytus and Irenaeus, said he was a Danite. That's what I say. Because Dan is literally called a serpent in the way, an adder that bites the horse's heels and causes them to fall backwards. And then Moses calls Dan a lion's cub, and Jacob calls Judah a lion's cub. And there's just this rivalry between Dan and Judah because they're both born around the same time. And Dan is obviously where Samson comes from, and Dan is destined to judge Israel as one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, if that was about Samson, it doesn't make sense because literally like every tribe except for like Issachar or except for like Zebulun, one of those tribes, every tribe has one of the judges. So to say that that's about Samson is just kind of weird because Samson didn't really defeat the Philistines until he died. So to say that he judged Israel like as if he like ruled over Israel, that is weird. And the ancient church fathers would say, no, that's fulfilled in the Antichrist because he's going to rule over all of Israel. He's going to be their judge, okay? And it just so happens that if you read Micah 5, Jesus is going to say that he will smite the judge of Israel on a rod, with a rod upon the cheek. Okay, now people think that's about Christ getting struck by the high priest, but he was actually smacked in the face, not struck with a rod. Well, the one who rules with a rod is Jesus, and the Antichrist gets struck down by a bolt of lightning from Jesus. He actually shoots lightning. It says in Thessalonians chapter 2, he's destroyed by the brightness of the Lord's appearing. But in Zechariah, it says he shoots lightning like arrows. Comes upon a cloud and he shoots lightning like arrows. Okay, so this is the Antichrist, and when you're going to find prophecies like this in Micah and Zechariah that seem like they could be talking about Christ or Antichrist kind of merged together. And I've gone through these in different videos, so I'm not going to do that here. But when it says this shall be the peace when the Assyrian comes into our land, the Assyrian is not the Antichrist. The Assyrian is Gog Magog. And then when he says we're going to raise up to him 7 shepherds, even 8 principal men, that is the 7 shepherds, even 8 principal men are the Antichrist team. Okay, so that's going to be the West, and the 3 kings that get plucked up look like it's going to be like Russia, Iran, and China or something like that. But you're going to have 10, and then he plucks up 3, and he's the 8th, who's one of the 7, and that's why they say 7 shepherds, even 8 principal men, okay? Because there's originally 10 kings, and then he plucks up 3, and then there's 7 left, and he's the 8th of the 7, and that's going to be in Revelation, where it says 7, even 8, and the 8th is going to go into perdition, okay? So literally, he's talking about the Jews raising up the Antichrist against Gog Magog, but this was misinterpreted by Chuck Missler and all these people to be that the Assyrian was the Antichrist. And that's where, when you get the Assyrian Antichrist, that's really what Joel Richardson is basing his Islamic Antichrist on, is the Assyrian, okay? That's not the proper interpretation of that. Chris White is going to look at it and say, hey, everything in Mystery Babylon is literally what you need to build the temple and furnish the sacrifices. Like all the goods traded in Mystery Babylon, if you look at it closely, it's everything that's used in the construction of the temple and the carrying out of the sacrifices. He's absolutely right, okay? Because there are 2 Mystery Babylons. One is going to be Neom. One falls into the Red Sea and is seen burning from the Red Sea. And then the other one is on a mountain in the wilderness. Okay? So they're both on a mountain and they're both in the wilderness, but only one of them's on the sea. And that's going to be Neom because it's actually building stuff on the Red Sea. Okay? That's going to be the port where they're going to get the stuff that is going to come up for the sacrifices, because you're going to have Gentiles coming up and giving sacrifices. Okay? You're going to have this worldwide campaign to get rid of meat, and the Gentiles are going to go up to Israel, and it's literally going to be where you get to go have a barbecue, you get to go sin your life away at Neom, because it's going to be a Las Vegas meets Singapore, meets New York, meets Paris, meets it all, plus all the technology in the world. You're going to go visit your dead loved ones and soul holograms of them and stuff like that. It's going to be crazy, okay? And then if you're a Muslim, you're going to go do your penance at Mecca. And if you're a Christian, you're going to go do your penance at Jerusalem. You're going to pay your sacrifices and have your sins atoned for as if Christ never died for you. Okay? That's what's going to happen in the last days. So Chris White is totally right on this. I disagree with him on the pre-wrath theory, but he's totally right on the Antichrist being a Jewish pretender. He's pretending to be the Messiah. He's anti-Messiah. Or anti means in the place of. Okay? in the place of, or against. Okay, the term against is it. Paul is going to use it in when he's talking about head coverings, and he's going to say, doesn't a woman have long hair? Anti a head covering. Okay, and anti means like in the place of. Okay, it doesn't when they say like Judas went to get what was needed against the feast. Okay, he's not saying that Judas is attacking the feast. He's saying what is needed for the feast. Okay, and so it really means more like for or in the place of, but anti means in the place of. Okay, so antichrist literally means in the place of Messiah. Okay, so it's a false Messiah. It's a pseudo Messiah. Joel Richardson is going to say no. It's a Muslim warlord that attacks Israel. Okay. His theory is stupid sauce, okay? But his theory is basically going to be post-trib. Chris White falls into the pre-wrath camp, and they're basically post-trib. And what you have emerging is when you see two sides of debate, and they're both pushing one thing forward, the thing they're both pushing forward is probably the error. And that is going to be post-trib, okay? Now, both of these guys are going to hold to the idea that in Revelation 6, when the sun turns to darkness and the moon turns to blood, see if I have that in my thing, okay? Now this is, if you watch John Holler's prophecy update, and I've sent John Holler a copy of my book. We've had a little bit of Facebook correspondence back and forth. I know he listened when I told him that Gog Magog was Turkey, because he said that in one of his episodes. We don't have like a relationship, but he listens when you send him stuff, okay? He has a ton of stuff. I'm probably one of thousands of people who send him stuff. But this is how I describe the four horsemen of the apocalypse. They're progressive, and they're all going to keep growing and growing and growing until you get to the sun turning to darkness and the moon turning to blood. Now you're going to have this, and I show this as progressive, okay? And then you're going to have all the martyrs, and then you're going to have the sun turn to darkness and the moon turn to blood, okay? And the whole earth shaking and a pole shift and all this stuff going on at once. That's when Daniel's 70th week starts. That's when the Jews are sealed to evangelize Israel, just Israel, for 3.5 years. The Gentiles are mostly underground and hiding and discipling, because the Gentiles are done. The fullness of the Gentiles has come in, okay? I'm not saying other Gentiles can't be saved after that, because they're definitely saved in the millennium. I'm saying as far as the church, the body of Christ, it's done, okay? That's done. You have the Jews, which are basically, it's a wedding, okay? The body of Christ is the bride. The Jews are either called the children of the bride chamber, in other words, the bridesmaids. That's the pre-Christian Jews. And then the post-Christian Jews are going to be called the friends of the bridegroom. Or I'm sorry, they're going to be called the 144,000. They're the groomsmen, okay? And John the Baptist is the best man. John the Baptist is the one who introduces the groom, okay? That's what the best man does. And the church is going to be the Gentile bride. And if you read Malachi and you understand it, he's telling you the true Levi is going to be the church, because the Levi is in Christ, and we're coated with the blood of Christ, and we're one flesh with him, okay? So anyways, the Gentiles are done when Daniel's 70th week starts. Now it's just about evangelizing the Jews, but you're going to have true and false Jews. You're going to have Jews that are learning that Christ is really the Messiah, and then you're going to have other Jews that are promoting the Antichrist, okay? And the whole world's going to be watching, and the whole world's going to be suffering, but most of that suffering is going to be on the Antichrist kingdom, okay? It's mostly going to be focused on Israel. The kings of the East are going to be, this is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, that's going to form the kings of the East that are going to come against him. And they're going to start coming against him at the midpoint of the tribulation, and that's why the angel says the mystery of God will be finished, because the mystery of God is the Gentiles becoming one flesh with Christ. If you read that in Ephesians, the mystery that is going to be finished is that's when the rapture is going to happen, at the seventh trump, okay? So it happens at the seventh trump. The abomination of desolation happens in the temple, and on the exact same day, that night, you're going to see one taken and one left, okay? And this is just Luke 17. Just read Luke 17. And if you go with the rule of what was written first, Luke 17 is going to tell you that before Matthew 24, before Paul's 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, before Jesus says, go read Daniel, he's going to tell them in Luke 17 about the kingdom coming. He's going to say they're going to be saying, lo here, lo there. In other words, Antichrist, they're going to think the Antichrist is Christ and that he's already here. And he's going to say the days will come when you will desire to see the Son of Man, but you will not see it. They'll say, see here, do not go or follow after them. In other words, they're going to be pointing as if Christ is here, but don't. That's not Christ. And he's going to say, for as lightning lights under one part of the heaven and shines in the other part of heaven, so shall the Son of Man be in his day, okay? But first he must suffer many things and be rejected of this generation. So this is where Christ first announces his two comings, okay? He does this publicly. The Jews, the Jewish disciples are not totally sold on the idea that Christ is going to die and have two comings yet. He starts telling his disciples this, but they're not getting it, okay? They don't really get it until the night of his betrayal. And when he's like, I'm going to go away and you can't follow me. Okay? He's going to go die. Okay? And he's going to tell him he's going to be suffered and rejected by this generation, but he's talking about his second coming as lightning. Okay? Now this is where he kills the Antichrist with the brightness of his appearing, Paul says in 2 Thessalonians. So that happens on that day. Okay? And then it says, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. They did eat, drink, married wives, and were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise also was it in the days of Lot. They did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. But in the same day, this is so important, in the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone in heaven and destroyed them all. He's going to say this about a couple of weeks before the Olivet Discourse. And in the Olivet Discourse, he's going to carefully explain that Lot fleeing Sodom is the Jews fleeing Jerusalem, because this is a public discourse, this is a public parable, and that Noah entering into the ark is the rapture. Okay? He's going to explain this. He's going to explain him showing up like lightning is going to be the angels showing up and gathering all the elect from one end of heaven to the other. And when does he show up? He says when the Antichrist sits in the temple and claims to be God, he's going to show up and destroy him with the brightness of his appearing. Okay? And then he says, even so, even thus shall it be in the day that the Son of Man is revealed. In that day, he which is on the housetop and the stuff that's in his house, let him not take it away. He that is in the field, let him not return back. Remember Lot's wife. Again, all this is, he goes over this and explains it in Matthew 24, which is a few weeks later. And then he says, whoever shall seek to save his life shall lose it. Whoever shall lose his life shall preserve it. Okay? He's saying this primarily to Jews, because Jews are going to need to flee at the abomination of desolation. He hasn't told them about the abomination of desolation yet. He's going to tell them in Matthew 24, and he's going to tell them to read Daniel. And that's what Paul does. Okay? And then he's going to say, I tell you, in that night, remember he just keeps saying the same day, right? Now he's saying in that night, in other words, the night after he appears, two men shall be in one bed, one will be taken, one will be left. So Jesus isn't just going to show up in a flash and a bunch of people disappear. Jesus is going to show up. He's going to be seen in the clouds all day long. He's going to show up, shoot lightning down at the Antichrist, kill his ass, and then he's going to sit there and his sign is going to appear in the clouds, because literally the whole New Jerusalem is going to be there. That's what we get raptured to. Whether or not it's going to be visible or masked in the clouds, I don't know. But they say the sign of the Lord is going to be an outspreading in heaven. Some people believe it's the sign of the cross, or it's just going to be the Lord appearing. But the whole world's going to see it, and they're going to know it's Jesus. Okay? And then that he's going to be there all day long. And that night, the night they're fleeing Jerusalem, it says, two men will be in a bed, one will be taken, the other will be left. Two women shall be grinding together, one will be taken, the other will be left. Two men shall be in the field, one will be taken, one will be left. Why do you have daytime and nighttime activities happen? Because it's global. Because all these people are going to be taken from all these parts of the earth to the New Jerusalem, which is going to be hovering over Jerusalem. Okay? And then from the New Jerusalem, that's where the bowls of wrath get poured out on Jerusalem, on the Antichrist kingdom. Okay? They're going to get poured out for 3.5 years. And the final bowl is Christ doing a superhero touchdown on the Mount of Jerusalem, like boom, does a knee drop on Jerusalem, and it splits it open. And the last of the Jews are allowed to flee to Basra. Okay? The superhero drop, listen, Christ was the original superhero drop. He's the one who did it, okay? And that's what's going to happen. That's how it's going to go down, okay? That's my timeline. Again, I have watched my other videos where I have this stuff, but here's the thing. Why am I against all these other eschatology theories? Because I'm trying to be the best? No, that's not why, okay? This is why. All of these theories, and I mean the pre-wrath theory, the Islamic Antichrist theory, AOC's theory, I mean FAI's theory, I mean, Messiah 2030. Knew where they all go to? They all take you to the sign of the sun turning to darkness and the moon turning to blood, and they all of them. And all these theories just started popping up. Please understand me. In the past 20 years, these theories started popping up. Most of these theories started becoming known in the past 10 years. Okay? All these theories all of a sudden started shifting it to the sun turning to darkness and the moon turning to blood to being the end of Daniel's 70th week. Now, the dispensationalists put it in Daniel's 70th week. I argue there is nothing that puts it in Daniel's 70th week. It's a progression of signs that lead up to Daniel's 70th week. Okay? The dispensationalists have always put it in the first half of Daniel's 70th week and the trumpets, but they think the pre-trib rapture happens and then all this stuff starts to happen. Okay, so their theory is wrong. But all your pre-wrath, post-millennial, or post-tribulational theories, and I mean Joel Schimmel, okay? I mean your post-trib guys, your pre-wrath guys, all of them are going to say when the sun turns to darkness, the moon turns to blood, that's the end of the tribulation. They're all starting to line up the Gog-Magog invasion as being Armageddon, and it's not. It's not Armageddon. It's what leads up to Israel becoming prominent again so that the Antichrist can come to power. Okay? So I look at this and I go, this is God sending a great delusion on the earth, okay? Literally, you have theory after theory after theory that was putting the sixth seal sign, which I say is the beginning of Daniel's 70th week, at the end of Daniel's 70th week. And now all of a sudden you have Messiah 2030, which is when I say is the earliest time I think the Antichrist can appear. There's a Messiah Netflix movie. So scary. And guess what? He's a Muslim. There's a false Messiah movie on Netflix, and he's a Muslim. He's an Iranian Muslim, okay? But Messiah 2030, that's the earliest date I said the Antichrist can come. Maybe 2029, 2030, that's when the two witnesses would come. And all of a sudden you have these theories that are popping up that's saying, oh, that's when we think Messiah is going to come, okay? Why is this happening? Because this is the great delusion. Okay? Remember, God says he'll send them a lie. Okay? And that lie is being propped up with prophecies, visions, scholarship. All this stuff is leading you to worship a false Messiah. And what's going to happen is you're going to have an invasion of the Middle East where you're going to have, look at, this is your Netflix movie about a false Messiah, and he's an Iranian Muslim, okay? And you're going to have Russia in the Gog-Magog invasion, who is allied with Iran, and they're going to try to attack the Middle East. They're going to try to attack Israel and Saudi Arabia, and they're going to fail. Okay? What's going to happen there is the whole world is going to be sold on the idea that if they're over there in the East, America's going to get nuked, and Russia and North Korea are going to get nuked. Persia's probably not going to get nuked, I don't think, but we'll see. But what you're going to have is you're going to have the whole world being sold on the idea that in the West, they're going to say Gog-Magog was Russia. In the East, they're going to say Mystery Babylon was America. But they're both going to be saying the Antichrist has been defeated. So when the real Antichrist shows up, the whole world, no matter what persuasion you are, is going to think it's Christ. Okay? It's being set up because this is 7 years away. We're 7 years away from this, okay? We could literally be 7 years away from World War III and the Antichrist coming up. And I do believe that. Okay? I'm not saying that because I'm trying to date set. I'm saying I've been watching for a long time, and the signs seem to keep pointing in that direction. And it's getting louder and louder and louder. Okay? And I kid you not. I mean, this has been seeded for a while. Go to the Terminator movies. When does John Connor, JC from the future, defeat the robot army? 2029. Go just look at how many movies mention 2029 and 2030 as a kind of Messiah coming or a new age starting. Okay? It's just all over the interwebs. It's all over the movies. Okay? And I'm seeing this stuff. When I put in Messiah 2030 and boom, boom, I've got a timeline that says he's going to pop up. I've got this false Antichrist movie about a false theology. That lines up with AOC's network. Boom's right there because they distort who the two witnesses are to make it workable with that theory. We've got that working with both sides of this debate. Joel Richardson, it works with his Islamic Antichrist theory perfectly. We've got Alan Kirshner's, he calls it the Antichrist Great Tribulation, because remember, there's going to be a massive persecution of Christians in the fifth seal, and he's saying that the Antichrist, he calls it the Antichrist Great Tribulation. He's saying the second half of the tribulation is when Christians start getting persecuted. There you go. That works with it too. So Eschatos Ministries is co-opting this theory. You've got the post-tribulation view, which is basically like Jesus picks up everyone at the seventh trump and then he pours out the bowls really quick. That corroborates with it. It corroborates with the amillennial view, because the amillennial view doesn't have a distinct timeline, but it does have an Antichrist at the end of it, because they see the part where Satan is released from the bottomless pit of the 1,000 years workable with the Antichrist. Okay, so that will work because they don't have any prophecies they're trying to coordinate. Okay, they just have a general theory of the millennium being symbolic, but Satan being released at the end to deceive the nations one last time for Gog Magog, because that's in the book of Revelation. So they're going to be sold on the fact that Gog Magog is the end of the millennium. Okay, so they're going to buy into it. Okay, then you have the pre-tribbers are all just going to prove themselves failures in predicting eschatology. Or remember, the only people who believe in pre-trib are Americans. That's it. It's a completely American theory. Okay, it was invented in England, but it was completely spread around America and in American Bibles. They don't believe in the pre-trib rapture outside of America. Okay, because the reason the pre-trib America, besides what I showed you, sells in America is because the whole idea is that America is going to stay on top until the rapture, and then the world's going to go to crap. Americans can just sit there and be fat and lazy and greedy and selfish and go on vacations and just marry and be given in marriage, and they think they'll suddenly be raptured, and then everyone else has to deal with the tribulation. It's an American theory for Americans, okay? So once the sun turns to darkness, the moon turns to blood, there will be no more pre-tribbers. They will all go to the pre-wrath camp, but all the other prevailing theories, listen, every single other theory, amillennial, pre-wrath, Islamic Antichrist, Messiah 2030, AOC's two-witness X-Men powers theory, okay? They all work with the idea of the sun turned to darkness and the moon turned to blood being the end of the tribulation. And I'm telling you, it's just the beginning. And I am the only one saying this, okay? The only one saying this. The pre-tribbers are saying it, but they're going to all be found out wrong when this happens, and they're not raptured. And their theory is going to go to crap. They're going to be like, we have nothing now. We have no idea what's going on now. Okay? The pre-tribbers were right in their timelines, but they were wrong in when the rapture happens. That's the only thing they're really wrong on. Other than that, most of my eschatology comes from their timelines because it's good. They're good timelines. Their timelines align with Hippolytus and Irenaeus and those guys. They just put the rapture before Daniel's 70th week arbitrarily. Okay? Based on the doctrine of imminency. And you want to throw out that doctrine. It's a bullcrap doctrine. Marv Rosenthal's going to line up with this. Charles Cooper's going to line up with this, and he's still alive. Ryan Habana's going to line up with this, and he's basically been debating Jan Markell's teams. Okay, so he's going to be popular among pre-tribbers once it all falls away. Okay, Joel Richardson's stupid, Greece. Babylon, Persia, Greece, skip Rome and go to the Caliphate theory is going to work with it. Okay, it's stupid Joel Richardson theory. The guy's so stupid. I literally there's so many people that I don't agree with, but I want to slap Joel Richardson across his mouth. I mean, he's just such a liar. He's just such a scam artist. He's such a liar. Okay, and then you have Nebuchadnezzar's statue. Okay. Joel Richardson's an idiot. Let me say it one more time. Joel Richardson is an idiot. Okay? He's an idiot. He's a fool. Okay? He's a liar and a fool. He's a liar and a fool. And if he doesn't come out and admit being a liar and a fool, I'm calling it. He's going to hell. He's going to hell. Like he's just such a deceiver. He's just so he's calling it anti-Semitic and demonic and satanic if you believe the Antichrist is going to be a false Messiah. And he is propping up, with the help of the Muslims and the Mormons, he's propping up the Islamic Antichrist theory so that people will believe that Iran is the great Antichrist. That's why they're supporting him, okay? I do not like this guy. I do not. Maybe he's a believer and he's just deeply, deeply, deeply deceived or just greedy or whatever it is, whatever his reason is. I do not like this guy, okay? He's a snake. Anyways, all of it is going to point to when the sun turns to darkness and the moon turns to blood, the thing is over. And I'm going to tell you guys this. I want to tell you this. Church, spread this around, okay? When this happens, you're going to have, as far as I can tell, one book that says proper eschatology at this point. Every one of these theories is going to be wrong unless you line up and worship the Antichrist. Okay? So maybe my book all of a sudden starts getting popular, or maybe it gets banned. We'll see. I don't know. But I'm literally the only one telling you that when the sun turns to darkness and the moon turns to blood, that's when Daniel's 70th week starts. I have not found anyone, and I mean anyone, telling you this. And this is not a difficult theory to figure out. I'm going to show you this right now for timeline's sake, okay? Apparently, I don't have that, but if you guys want to watch it, get those timelines and that. I don't know what I did with that PowerPoint slide, honestly, but if you want to watch it, you want to get to my playlist called Revelation Study 2020 through 2021, okay? You're going to see a complete breakdown of this and how it leads up into Daniel's 70th week. Again, this is a study where I think there's like 18 episodes and each one's like an hour to too long, okay? But watch it because it's people interacting, and we're walking through the passages, and we're walking through and slowing people down and showing them how to interpret, okay? So this was Michael and Brandon and Randy and Rhea, and there's another guy, and his name's escaping me, who is from, he's in Saudi Arabia right now. He's in the military. But this study is solid. Like we sat there and we walked through this stuff, and we actually broke down how to study prophecy and how to put stuff together, okay? And I walk you through in the same basic order as my book, but it just get my book. I mean, it's just written like slowly to help you like look at prophecy in the order. Like, listen, WWWF, okay? What was written first, okay? Or who wrote what first? WWWF, okay? Get that catchphrase in your head. What was written first? Because this is what this is based on, okay? It's going to start with, it's going to start with Luke 17, then it's going to go to Matthew 24, then it's going to go to Paul's writings, then it's going to go to the book of Revelation. So you can understand eschatology in the order that it was written. And then when I study eschatology, you want to study it in church history, what was written first? Who wrote what first? Who were they? What did they believe? I don't care if somebody wrote this amillennial theory before dispensationalism came out, if that guy believes the resurrection of the dead didn't happen. I don't freaking care. He's biased in his thinking and he's stupid, okay? But this is going to start you out in the Gospels. You're starting with Jesus. You're being taught by Jesus, not me, okay? You're being taught by Jesus what he said in order, explaining how the things tie together based on earlier things he said. Then you're being taught Daniel based on Paul's interpretation of Daniel, because you're being taken through Daniel as if Paul is literally teaching it to you based on the things he said in 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, Romans, and Hebrews, and 1 Corinthians. Okay? It's taking you through that, and then around chapter 3 it starts you in the book of Revelation. And it just takes you through the whole book of Revelation, verse by verse. It's going to take you through every single prophecy that the book of Revelation cites. Every single one it's going to show you. Because most of these are, if you get a good cross-reference Bible, it's in there already. Like, people older than me have figured most of this stuff out already. It's not like I'm figuring this out for the first time. I'm just figuring out for my generation and going back and realizing, oh, these guys already figured this stuff out. We're just being lied to and propagandized in our Bible schools and churches. That's all. This is part of the Great Delusion. They won't endure sound doctrine because everybody's too busy trying to prop up their denominational camp, and they're not teaching truth. So this book and this study right here, you watch this study, this Revelation study, you are going to be better equipped to deal with what's coming in terms of understanding what's going on than anybody out there. Because they're all following false theories that are all starting to coalesce into one big false theory that's going to have you looking at the Antichrist and going, this is what my theory says you're supposed to be Christ. Literally, that's how it's lining up the timing, okay? And it's not a coincidence that they're all doing it, okay? You guys need to spread this around. Just be low-key with people, but just tell them, like, point them to the book, point them to this Bible study, and be like, this guy is telling you that all of the theories, listen to what I'm telling you guys loud and clear. I'm saying all of the eschatology theories are lining up and coalescing into a version that tells you when the Antichrist shows up, that's Jesus. Okay? Listen to me telling you this. There's a reason why I'm tiny and have 303 subs, and AOC Network, and that guy who accused me of slander, we're gonna watch this together, okay? The Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez Network. That's how you know. Illuminati confirmed, right? It's the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez Network teaches that the two witnesses are the church and Israel, and that they're going to have X-Men powers, okay? Watch this video if you think I'm lying. He is going to argue that the Antichrist starts attacking the Christians because the Christians are using X-Men powers. Watch this.
No matter who it is, you wouldn't just say, well, I'm a Christian, so I guess since we're peaceful people.
He's going to talk about being violent with X-Men superpowers, shooting lightning, okay? And I don't know the exact wording. This is a 45-minute video, but watch it yourself. He's going to talk about getting violent, and he's literally has movies clipped together with people shooting lightning at people and saying, we're going to do this, okay? He's going to say, see, the power of Elijah. He will go on before the Lord in the power of Elijah. And he's going to allegorize this all into be basically the charismatic movement, because he's a charismatic, okay? He's going to use his weird two lamps theology. And basically what he's saying is because there are two churches, the church is the lampstand. And so since there's two churches that don't have anything bad about them spoken, those are going to be the two lamps, and that's the two witnesses, okay? And he's going to say that, well, those two churches represent the persecuted church and the marginalized church. That literally it says about one of them, you have a little power, okay? So he's going to basically use this false theology, this false allegory, and he literally, I don't know exactly where he does it, but I've seen this. Again, he only puts out like one video a month. You could probably watch all of his stuff in a week. But he's literally going to have video clip together with people who are shooting lightning at people out of their hands, like X-Men, and saying that's what's going to prompt the Antichrist to start to attack and persecute Christians, okay? This guy is deceived, okay? He's going to get on his videos and he's going to start speaking in tongues because he's just feeling the juju from the false doctrine he's teaching, okay? And this is stuff that I experienced in the charismatic church. People say some made-up stuff they made to you, then be like, Shanda, blah, 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 like that, like seals the deal. Like, see, it's from the Holy Spirit, right? And he's going to do this in his show. He's I don't know if he's like Bethel crazy, but he is crazy charismatic. We're going to have superpowers and bring the kingdom by the powers of our lightning X-Men powers, okay? He is definitely teaching this, okay? Anyone who says I'm lying, come see me. Come see me, but I'm telling you, watch these movies, watch everything he says about the two witnesses, watch what he says about the Elijah anointing and the Elijah generation, and he is going to flat out say, look at the power of the first Christians, okay? He's going to, it's just the same mountainous, charismatic, overblown, everybody needs to be doing signs and wonders, and it's going to turn into violent signs and wonders. And literally, Jesus says when the disciples talk about doing that, Jesus tells them, you don't know what spirit you are of, because that's what the false prophet does, calls down fire from heaven on people, okay? And that's why he tells his disciples, when they say, should we call down fire from heaven on him? Jesus says, no, you don't know what spirit you're of. In other words, if you think God's power, the Holy Spirit, is for you to call down fire on people, look at, God is about to punish.
Did you know that there are
this Elijah generation, okay? Now he's talking about these people, look, who are gathering guns, but they don't need guns because we're going to have, where is it? He's talking about people getting together and praying, and he doesn't just say it in one video. He says it in like 5 videos, okay? He's saying that we're going to basically start praying, and we're just going to start manifesting these signs and have power like Elijah had power, and we're going to call down fire from heaven. He's literally talking about Elijah powers, okay? And this guy's promoting this Messiah 2030, okay? So I'm not slandering anybody. If anything, I'm slandering everybody, okay? I'm saying they're all wrong but me. So go ahead and get them all. Go ahead and get your eschatology buff. We can have a conversation. We can have a debate. I don't think debates are productive, but I'm standing by what I'm saying as the true teaching of the Word of God. And I'm saying you guys are coming under a great delusion. And because you and all the generations before you never bothered to study eschatology, you never have it taught in your churches. Never, ever, 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 ever. And if they do, it's a whitewash, like just slide through it and not really look at it that seriously. And that's the same as the Jews were before Christ's first coming. That's why nobody saw it coming. That's why the foreign magi saw it, but none of the Jews did. So you guys need to get with it, okay? I'm telling you, I've had 23 plus years of deep study of eschatology, and I'm telling you, this is how it's going to go down, okay? The sun turns to darkness and the moon turns to the blood at the end of World War III. That's what stops World War III. That's what starts Daniel's 70th week. The whole world is going to tell you that Armageddon just ended. The whole world is going to say it. The Muslims are going to say it. The Christians are going to say it. The Catholics are going to say it. The Orthodox are going to say it. All these false eschatologies are going to all line up and say it. And it's only going to be the people who are full of the Holy Spirit that are going to come out of these camps, including probably some of these authors. They're going to come out of it and be like, I was deceived and deceiving others. Okay? I don't look at... I'm fine with Alan Kirshner and Chris White saying I was mistaken. Joel Richardson needs to come out and say I was deceived and deceiving others. I need to repent. I need to ask forgiveness for all the people that I led to believe that the Gog-Magog invasion was Armageddon, and all the people that I led to believe that when the Antichrist showed up, he's Christ. Because that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to stand before God and say that. And they're going to have to come to deep repentance and realize, you didn't just screw up. You didn't just sleep with your girlfriend. You didn't just cheat on your taxes. You led millions astray. You led millions to not be prepared, not be out there preaching the gospel, not be giving their money away, not be literally going into the underground church and trying to be a witness in the ministry. These pre-tribbers are going to be like, you led people to sit on their retirement accounts and do nothing until their retirement accounts were taken away because you told them they were going to be raptured before the tribulation happens. You've heaped up treasure for yourselves in these last days. Didn't you read James? What do you think he's talking about? You heaped up treasure for yourselves in the last days. Woe to you. Your gold is rusted and corrupted. Woe to you. He's not talking about the first century Christians. It's a prophecy about the last days Christians. He literally talks about the former and the latter rain before that, or right after that. He talks about the former and latter rain. He talks about Job. He talks about Elijah. And he's prophesying about the rich Christians in the last days who are going to glorify God in the fires. You need to read your prophecy, y'all. And being rich in the last days, and they're going to lose it all. And if you're smart, you're going to find some ministry overseas in some poor country that you can sow into, so that when America gets too hostile for Christians and Jews to be here, you have somewhere to go. You have somewhere to go. You have people that you've been supplying for materially for years who can now turn around and supply food, clothing, and shelter for you. Because it's going to be hell in America. The white horse and the black horse come primarily to the north country. Go read Zechariah. The white horse and the black horse come primarily to the north country. And that's what leads. It's the false prophets that lead to the persecutions and killing of Christians. There's going to be a slaughter of Christians throughout America. Okay? We are not going to get militant and you're fine if you're a Christian. Okay? You're going to have a false blend of Calvinist Catholicism, ecumenicalism, Americanism that is going to be a V for Vendetta state, and they're going to kill true Christians. Promise you it's going to happen. Okay? I promise you it's going to happen. Okay? This stuff's going to happen, and when the sun turns to darkness and the moon turns to blood, you better have a place to lay low. Because after that, there's not going to be any more Gentiles coming to Christ. So unless you're in Israel and unless you're among an underground church somewhere, not going to go well for you. The world's going to be against you. There's going to be a false church against you. The Jews are going to be against you. The Muslims are going to be against you. The atheists are going to be against you. The New Agers are going to be against you. And there's no one else coming to Christ. So there's no point in going out and preach the gospel. Nobody's going to receive it. Nobody is going to receive it. Okay? Literally, that's why Revelation 7, you have a people of many tribe, nation, and tongues coming out of great tribulation at the beginning of Daniel's 70th week. It's because the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. That's it. There's no more. They're all seated in heaven now. They're all there. So you can disciple people and you can lead them into understanding what's happening. But your job is to lay low, survive, and teach the people around you to understand what's happening and study my book. Read my book. Just read my book and sort through the Bible and just like, oh, turns out this guy was trying to tell you what to do all along. Where am I going to be? I don't know. India, Africa, Nigeria, I don't know, maybe Saudi Arabia. I applied for a recruiting job at Neon. Maybe I'll be in Jordan. Maybe I'll be in Israel. I don't know. I'm not going to be sitting in America waiting to die. That's for sure. Anyways, trust me, you guys. When you say that I'm saying stuff out of slander, get your facts right. Get them together. Get your proofs. Don't just run off at the mouth, okay? I'm telling you, I watched AOC for years. I watched him for years. I watch every eschatology channel. Do you know why? Because I'm always looking for other people who are seeing what I'm seeing, and I'm barely finding any. Okay? The closest I found is Chris White, and he's pre-wrath. Okay? I found one professor who goes to Leighton Flowers School who is now teaching Mid-Trib. One professor. And he's barely asserting the theory because it's so unpopular. Okay? Anybody with any... This is what a demonic, delusional stronghold America has on its seminaries and its churches. The mid-trib position is the obvious position if you read the earliest writers on the subject. It's the obvious position. It's the obvious position if you just know the whole contents of the biblical prophetic narrative. Okay? But no school teaches it. They're all like dogmatically pre-trib or dogmatically amil. All of them. Why? I don't know. Now some schools are popping up that are starting to be pre-wrath. And pre-wrath is a crap theory. Pre-wrath is an anti-pre-trib theory. It's not a good theory of its own. And this is what boils down to, this is why when I met Alan Kirshner and Ryan Habana, this is why they ghosted me. Is because I sat through their seminar, I listened to everything they had to say, I listened to everybody else ask questions, and when everyone was done, I said, I have 4 questions. I just waited for everyone to be done just in case somebody would ask them, but I have 4 questions that nobody asked. Can I ask all 4? And they said, yeah. And all 4 questions they couldn't answer. I asked them, what do you do with Luke 17? They said, we don't have a clue. I said, where do you place the Gog-Magog invasion? They said either at the end of millennium or we don't have a clue. I said, where do you place the 2 witnesses and how do you affect the fact that the 2 witnesses prophesied for 3.5 years ending with the 7th trump and then get raptured? We don't have a clue. And then I said, have you ever looked at the mid-trib position and found out that why you wouldn't subscribe to that because it fits everything perfectly? And this was Ryan Habana's answer. Nobody believes in the mid-trib position. That was his answer. And Alan Kirshner's answer was, I've never studied the mid-trib position. He's never even tried to understand it. Okay? And then they asked, I said, well, I wrote a book on it and I gave Alan a copy of it, but can you guys look at it because I think it's a better position than pre-wrath in terms of the timeline. And they said, well, can we take this offline? And I never heard from him again. No response after that. Okay? No response whatsoever. They know who I am. They don't want to listen to me. Because if I'm right, these conferences that they've been doing to promote pre-wrath, that's Marv Rosenthal and Charles Cooper, they've got a camp now. Chris White, they've got a handful of guys that are promoting this theory now, and that's starting to gain some traction in the world, and they know it. Because everybody who comes against the pre-trib ends up at pre-wrath. And they end up at pre-wrath because your average person thinks pre-wrath is mid-trib, but pre-wrath is actually post-trib. They deliberately chose a term that is ambiguous. When's pre-wrath? Well, pre-trib would say they're pre-wrath. Post-trib would say they're pre-wrath. Mid-trib says they're pre-wrath. So when's pre-wrath? Well, most people take it and they assume it's mid-trib. It's not pre-trib, it's not post-trib, it's pre-wrath. Well, when's that? They assume it's mid-trib. It's not mid-trib. It's post-trib. It's basically like 80-90% way to the end of the tribulation trib. Okay? It's not mid-trib. So, again, I've tried with these people. I don't go around saying somebody's a false teacher if they're just wrong on a point of fact. I just go, they're wrong on that, and here's why. I don't go around calling somebody a false teacher unless I know they're telling lies and they're teaching things that are definitely false and they're not willing to listen to correction. Okay? So I've tried with these people. I've tried to reach out to them. I've tried to get them to listen to correction. They won't listen to correction. So that's on them. Okay? I'm not responsible for what they So here's another guy say, I do remember AOC talking about the X-Men powers thing and thinking it aligned way too much with the NAR New Age Christians. See, I'm not the only one who's seen this, whoever's saying this, okay? This is facts. It's on his videos. You need to watch his videos and find out, okay? I'm telling you, get your eschatology straight, because if you get your eschatology straight, the rest of your theology, I'm not saying all your theology should be built on eschatology, but I'm saying it was 20% of the New Testament for a reason. Okay? 20% of the Gospels is eschatology. So you need to understand that. So I hope you guys are blessed by this. Hope you get edified. And again, stay in the Word, get in the Word, get in those series of mine if you have any questions. Before you come at me and say, hey, do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? Because I need to keep going with new stuff and new stuff that I'm studying. Please go familiarize yourself with the older stuff. And if you don't know, you guys who've been on the channel, if you can answer those comments for me and say, hey, it's on this video or that video, that way I don't have to keep answering the same questions over and over again. That will help me out, and that will allow me to stay focused on new things and new content that you guys haven't heard yet, okay? So I hope you guys are blessed by this. Hope you have a great weekend. Batman out. Peace.